Ghaziabad branch chairman will start.
Shall I start, sir?
Yes, yes.
Good morning to one and all present. Oh, good evening. CA Mangesh Kinare, sir, the chairman of Ethical Standards Board, CA Kemisha Soni, ma'am, and CA Gyanchand Mishra ji, Central Council member. We also have CA Nitin Gupta, Regional Council member from Ghaziabad. We welcome you all in this webinar on Code of Ethics, that is virtual CPE meeting. Code of Ethics, the Code of Ethics has been changed by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India recently. Before this revision, before the revision of this Code of Ethics, the practicing chartered accountants were not allowed to have some income, have some earning in capital market, but because of this revision, the institute now allow the practicing chartered accountants to have some income, have some earning in capital market through stock market and derivatives as well. And also one major change, that is on our visiting card, we visiting cards. Like the chairman of Gazette branch can write below our name as chairman as well. Before this revision, we were not allowed to do the same.
Yeah.
So there has been many things that our institute is working upon. So to start with, I would request CA Gyanchand Mishra ji, the Central Council member of ICI, for his opening remarks.
So thank you, Karanji. Very respected Chairman of Ethical Standard Board, my good friend, CA Mangesh Kinare ji. My brother, Regional Council member from Ghaziabad, Nitin Gupta ji, and of course, the Chairman of the host branches, Ghaziabad, Noida, Lucknow, and Thane. And very importantly, all the respected participants of today's program. Good evening to all of you. Friends, we all know that Code of Ethics is one of the very integral part of the ethics and values that we need to follow. And this is like a backbone for any professional in order to practice in an orderly manner, as well as to give best to the society in such a way so that the values of the profession is being observed in total manner. Friends, we all know that the new edition of Code of Ethics came into effect from 1st of July 2020. This is differentiated in three parts, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. Recently, from 1st of October 2022, few of the provisions of the Code of Ethics, which could not be implemented earlier due to COVID, have now been implemented and now in effect. These provisions consist of no-CLAR, tax services to audit clients, and fee-related size, all these things. So friends, now the chartered accountants are not only bound with the rules, regulations, and laws, those are related to the business. Now we have to observe the rules and regulations and laws which are bind on law of land in any manner. So now the CAs are not only supposed to be the expert of the business laws. We are supposed to be the persons who have to understand the entire law of land, of which applicability is there in any manner on the business enterprises. So no-CLAR, non-compliance of laws and regulations. So this is very important law, and I hope that the chartered accountant who is undergoing the audit of the organization, whether it might be internal audit, it might be statutory audit, they need to understand that what are the applicable laws on that organization specifically, other than the laws which are being orderly taken as the business laws. Friends, the purpose of these Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct is there must be integrity, there must be objectivity, and the basic thing on which all these two parameters depend, that depends on the professional competence and due care. Professional behavior of the chartered accountants with the colleagues, their advertisement, how much they can take, what are the areas in which they can work, what are the do's and don'ts. All those things need to be discussed and to be understood in toto, because very small thing which we understand that this could be possible and within the ethics and laws, those might be not. So it is very important that we observe the code of ethics in such a way so that we could prove our best of services before the client. At the same time, we could be within the ambit of the various compliances of the acts of the institute as well as acts of law of the land. So friends, our very learned council member, Mangesh Kindreji, who is chairman of the committee, is with us, and he will be deliberating on a very important topic, which is of utmost important. At the same time, 2 CPER credit is needed for this topic to each and every member. And because of that, only the freshly qualified chartered accountants, we are providing a lot of guidelines, booklets, and code of ethics write-ups, so that they could observe the things. And because of some small things, their issue is not being raised before the respected institute with regard to the code of ethics or code of conduct. So by these words, I welcome respected Mangesh sir for his kind deliberation, and I do hereby acknowledge the presence of the officers of the institute who have spared their valued time for this program. So thank you, and over to Mangesh bhai.
Shall I start? So, thank you very much, Gyan bhai. I am just sharing my screen also. I hope you are able to see this screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. So, my very close friend and my colleague in the council, although he's in the first term, he is so active in examinations, in CPE committee, on a different fields. And I'm quite amazed that when I was in the first year of council, I was not this much active. But Gyan bhai has really shown his activeness and the kind of issues he's raising regarding members, especially small and medium practitioners. And he was after me to take this session on Code of Ethics for small and medium practitioners, especially. So thank you, Gyan bhai, for insisting upon this session and making it possible. I must thank even Ghaziabad, Noida, Lucknow, and Thane branches also for joining the hands with Ethical Standard Board. So I can see the chairman of Ghaziabad branch, respected regional council member of CIRC, and also chairman of Thane branch. I was seeing, I think Lucknow branch chairman is also here, and Noida branch chairman is also here. And I understand that the registration for this session has gone beyond 3,000. So it's a great response in that sense. So good evening to all the members. And welcome to this session of I have taken a caption that's commonly observed issues for in Code of Ethics for small and medium practitioners. And as Gyan bhai has rightly said, few provisions have been implemented from 1st October 2022. So towards the end, we'll deal with those provisions also. What I want to plan to do is I'll be speaking for about 1.5 hours, taking some of the issues and discussing with you all. And last 10-15 minutes or so, Vice Chairperson of Ethical Standard Board, Madam Kemisha Soni, she will also sum up this session, and we'll have some questions also towards the end. So with this, I'm just starting the presentation. I would request members who are listening. Generally, I have the standard presentation for all kinds of session on code of ethics. The only thing is that we deliberate on the issue. If I'm speaking physically, then it's more of an interactive session. If I'm taking virtually, I take certain issues out of it because it's not possible to take all the issues. I'll take certain issues out of it, and then we can have a questions later also. So, yeah. I hope Karan ji slide change हो रही है ना आपके यहाँ पे देखा आपने screen पे?
हाँ हो रहा है sir.
Yeah,
Slide is changing.
Yeah. So the first issue I would like to take is, as a practicing chartered accountants, what activities can be carried out by us? See, typically, Gyan Bhai has also told me repeatedly, Mangesh Bhai, to take it in a positive manner. हम क्या कर सकते हैं, कैसे कर सकते हैं, आप जरा उसके ऊपर थोड़ा ध्यान दीजिए, जरा ये करना. So I will try to do that. So, as a practicing chartered accountant, what are the activities we are allowed to do? Because there was one question asked to me in the one program by a member, that when he appeared before the income tax authority, the income tax commissioner told him that you cannot do the income tax practice at all. You can't do the tax thing. You can't do the tax representation at all. And where it is written, you show me. And that member told me that it was not possible for him to display. So he asked me to point out that which are the provisions which enable us to do the tax practice. So there are different things. I have raised certain issues, and whether we are allowed to do tax practice, whether insolvency professional is need to have COP, what is part-time in practice. So all these issues are there. So friends, in this regard, let us understand very briefly what are the provisions of the Act. Our Chartered Accountants Act, Section 2, Subsection 2 specifies the activities which can be carried out by the practicing chartered accountant. In fact, the wording of this section is a member of an institute shall be deemed to be in practice if he is carrying out following activities. So if a member of an institute is carrying out these activities, he shall be deemed to be in practice. If you see, it is there on your screen. As I said, it's better if the members are looking at screen so that they will understand in a better perspective. On the screen, you will find out that there are actually 3 clauses. I have just bifurcated into first 4. Now, all these 3 clauses of Section 2, Subsection 2 talks about accounting and auditing. Nowhere it talks about taxation, right? But there is a residuary clause which says that such other services as prescribed by the council. Now, council has prescribed certain services, and which are there. Again, some of them are there on your screen. Now, in that also you will find that there is no service which is relating to the tax service. So tax return filing or tax management doesn't come anywhere up to this stage. Now, one would wonder that where am I? So now these are the activities which the practicing chartered accountants are allowed to do. Till now, the return filing or representation service doesn't come. But if you see at the end of the screen, there is something called as administrative services. Now, administrative services have been defined under Volume 1, Subsection 602. Now, if you see the examples of administrative services given there, it talks about word processing services, preparing administrative or statutory forms for client approval, submitting such forms as instructed by client. Now, I have underlined certain items there for client approval as instructed by client. So, return filing can be captured here. So, if I'm preparing the statutory form, return form for client approval, I'm submitting it form as approved by client. Right? These are the administrative services, and it is covered under Section 2, Subsection 2, Clause 4, under residuary clause. Similarly, the tax advisory or tax consultation services comes under Regulation 191 of CA regulation. So, friends, we are allowed to do, we are very much allowed to do these activities, and we can do under these clauses. But friends, there are a number of other activities which the practicing chartered accountant can undertake. I repeat, section 2, subsection 2 says that if a member is carrying out these activities, he shall be deemed to be in practice. So it is not that you should have a COP, then what activities you can do. It is other way around. If you are a member and if you are carrying out these activities, then you are deemed to be in practice. And if you are deemed to be in practice, you must take the COP in your hand. Therefore, many times people say that, no, I'll surrender my COP. I don't want to do CPRs and all those things. So I'll surrender my COP, but I'll do the tax filing. I can do the project finance. Now, if you go through this section 2, subsection 2, and all these residuary clauses under clause 4, residuary activities, all activities are covered. So if you are a member and you are doing a tax filing, if you are a member and you are doing a financial consultancy, if you are a member and you are doing a representation service, you are deemed to be in practice. So there is no question at all. Similarly, I again take you to the prior slide. Similarly, the registered valuer or insolvency professional, if you can see on the screen, these have been included under residuary management consultancy and other services under clause 4. So if you are a chartered accountant member and doing as an insolvency professional or registered valuer, you are deemed to be in practice and therefore you should have a COP. So many times people ask, I am an insolvency professional, whether I want to practice as an insolvency professional, whether I should take a COP or not. There is no question. If you're a member and doing an insolvency professional activities, you are deemed to be in practice. So COP is a mandatory in this case. Now, friends, there is another issue before I go further. What is a part-time in practice and what is a part-time association with CA firm? I think it is not there on the screen. Okay, I'll take it. It is there further. Now, friends, there is in this regard, what activities can be carried out? Other activities can be carried out than other business and occupation. Now, clause 11. Now, here, friends, I would like to point out that there are two schedules to CA Act you may be knowing, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. First schedule talks about the misconducts which are internal in nature, whereas second schedule talks about the misconducts which are actually in relation to your activities which are impacting the outside world. So, in a negative manner, this schedules talks about the principles which have to be followed by the chartered accountants in practice and of course in service also. Now, clause 11, part 1 of the first schedule of CA Act says that a chartered accountant in practice is not allowed to engage in any other business or occupation. There is an exception for this clause in that clause only. And that exception is, except that he can be a director in a company, not being a managing director or whole-time director, provided he or his partners are not interested in that company as an auditor. So there is one exception to this other engagements in a definition only, in a clause only. And that is director in a company, but not being a whole-time managing director. Now, what do you mean by not being a managing director or whole-time director? To explain that in a better manner, there is one word which has been coined, that is a director simpliciter. Now, what do you mean by director simpliciter? That has been now clarified in this code in 2020. The director simpliciter means simple director who is not a managing whole-time director and taking part only in the board meetings or board committee meetings of the company and not paid any remuneration except for attending. So typically a director who is not taking part in any activity of the company and involved in only the meetings of the company, that is a board meeting or a board committee meetings of the company, and he is not drawing any remuneration. Now, you can draw sitting fees, no problem. You can take part in the activities as far as the meetings are concerned. So nowhere the signature of the person should occur. So director simpliciter should not take part in any of the activities of the company. So I am a practicing chartered accountant. I am allowed to be a director in a company, but I should be a director simpliciter. If I'm actively taking part in the activities of the company, then I would be deemed to be part-time in practice. It's in other engagements which is not allowed for a practicing chartered accountant. Now, friends, there are a number of cases. There are a number of cases regarding this. As far as director simpliciter is concerned, we may feel that private limited company है उसमें director बन गया तो फर्क क्या पड़ता है. I'll give you one case which was there. I'll just for the reference. I'll be mentioning some of the cases. I'll not be going in detail of those cases. But in one case, it so happened that a chartered accountant in practice was a director on a private limited company, was a director simpliciter. Now, what happened was there were 3-4 directors, other directors. The loan of the company was sanctioned by the bank. Now, on that sanction letter, on that given date, there were no directors available. 2 signatures were required. Only one whole-time director was available. So they requested this chartered accountant. They wanted that sanction letter earlier in their hand. So they requested this chartered accountant director to sign that sanction letter, right? Acceptance letter of that sanction terms. So he signed that. Subsequently, when there was a dispute, there was a charge against this director that you have signed an acceptance letter on behalf of the company. You have taken active part or part in the activities of the company, which you are not allowed to do as a practicing chartered accountant. So when we are a practicing chartered accountant and we want to become a director in a company, it should be a director simpliciter without taking part in any of the activities of the company. Now, there are other activities also which can be carried out. There is Appendix 9 under CA Regulations 190A, which gives the list of the activities which a chartered accountant in practice can do with his practice, and that will not be treated as other engagements. Now, there are 2 parts of this. There is a general permission, there is a special permission. General permission means one can do these activities without informing to the institute also, no problem in that regard. Whereas a special permission means you have to take permission from the institute. Institute will permit you. In that case, even if you are carrying out those activities with practice, you will be still treated as full-time in practice. Now, friends, in general permissions, I would like to point out that we can be a honorary office bearers of educational, charitable trust, NGOs, etc. I can be a special executive magistrate. I can be a paper setter, examiner in the institute examinations. I would like to highlight, if you are looking at the screen, these 2 activities which have been mentioned. Acting as a loss surveyor under Insurance Act. I mean, one would be surprised to know that at least I know in Mumbai there are 2 chartered accountants who are doing only as an insurance surveyor activity. They are full-time in practice, they are having COP, they are partner in CA firm, but they are full-time doing only loss surveyors for insurance company. Now, that is an additional area for us to practice. A recovery consultant in bank. I'm not saying recovery agent. Recovery consultant in bank. Friends, we can, people are wondering that which are the area. This is also another area for us to have a practice in that. Last line in this is that owning agricultural land and carrying agricultural activities. There have been many questions to me in seminars that agricultural activities allowed to chartered accountants. Now, when we read generally Code of Ethics, I would always suggest you or request our friends that please read in a letter and spirit. By allowing this activity, the institute does not want chartered accountant in practice to be an agriculturist, mind you. It means that I can't be full-time devoted in agriculture, doing it in a proper manner. In that sense, I'll applying a machinery, then I'll apply labor and I'll be involved in the farm regularly. What is meant by owning agricultural land and carrying agricultural activity is that if I have an agricultural land in my name, ancestral land coming in my name, I can't sell it off just like that, but just because I am in practice. So I'm allowed to own that land. And having allowed to own that land, I just cannot keep it as it is. So the activity, I can get it done through somebody, right? So reasonableness should be there on the fact-to-fact basis. One should see to it. One cannot, it at times occurs when their RBI MEF form are to be filed. Your income from agriculture may be n times more than your professional activity. Then the issue will come whether this is a main activity or not, whether you are involved in that activity or not. So please read it in a letter and spirit. It is allowed to us because that many chartered accountants are from agricultural family background, and therefore, if their land is there in their name, if the cultivation is going on that land, fine, it is allowed to us. As far as special permission is concerned, lecturer in university, college, educational organizations are allowed to us. Going further, friends, there are, as I said, there are issues whether what is a part-time in practice and what is a full-time in practice. Now, we have seen under Regulation 190A, certain activities are allowed to us. Now, out of that, most of the activities, if I do in general permissions, with my practice, then I shall be still treated as full-time in practice. But if I'm employed in a CA firm, which is allowed under 190A, if I'm employed in any company with a special permission, then I'll be treated as part-time in practice. Now, what is part-time in practice? Part-time in practice means I'll not be allowed to do any attest functions. I will not be allowed to engage any article clerks. So if I'm doing other activities, I will not be allowed to do these two things. There is a confusion in the mind of members that if I'm a partner in 3 firms, or if I'm a partner in 3 firms and proprietor in 4th firm, whether I'm part-time in practice or not. Now, friends, let us understand that ultimately, even if I'm a partner in 3 firm and a proprietor in 4th firm, I'm still in practice. So when I'm in practice, I'm full-time in practice. But if I'm a partner in 2 firms and a director, full-time director in a company or employed in a company, then I'm part-time in practice. So if you're only in a practice, you may be a partner in any number of firms. You are still not part-time in practice. You are full-time in practice only. But your association with each firm is part-time association. And for empanelment purpose, that is relevant. So there's a difference between part-time in practice and part-time association in the firm. Going further, friends, there are a number of issues. Just like that director simpliciter is allowed in a company, issue may arise that whether a non-designated or non-working partner in an LLP which is carrying out a business activity is allowed or what. Now, code is very clearly saying that there is no equivalence between company and LLP. So while director simpliciter is allowed in company, similar like that, non-remuneration or non-working partners are not allowed in LLP doing in business. So as a practicing chartered accountant, I can't be partner of any type in any LLP which is doing a business. LLP which is registered as a chartered accountant firm, fine, there is no issue at all. Correct? Similarly, on the other issues, majority shareholding in a private company, whether I am allowed to do. Yes, I'm allowed to do. Whether activities I can carry out by HUF. Now, there was a WhatsApp message few months back, rather a year back or so, that chartered accountants are not allowed to form an HUF. There was hue and cry. What does that mean? Not allowed to form HUF means what? HUF comes automatically into existence. Artificially, if you try to form an HUF and do a business activity in that, it is not allowed. We are allowed to do only investments. Right? From the HUF funds, आप बाहर से generate नहीं कर सकते business करके पैसा. So HUF के पास जो funds है, you can invest it, we can earn interest or dividend or what investment income from that, and we can have that activities in HUF. But no other activities and investments can be carried out in the HUF. Now, shares and derivative transaction, Karanji just mentioned that institute has allowed. Let me clarify a little bit, Karanji. That derivatives transaction on own accounts have been allowed by the institute. Means if I'm in practice and I'm doing a derivative transaction or in my own name, it is allowed to me. But if I'm doing a consultation or I'm managing funds for others, it is not allowed derivative transaction like that. Secondly, as far as shares are concerned, institute is still categorically denied that a practicing chartered accountant cannot do the intraday shares trading activity. There is a decision of Ethical Standard Board. Yes, share investment, it was allowed earlier also, allowed now also. So investments are definitely allowed in shares. If you think about intraday trading, it is still not allowed for shares. Derivative transactions on own account, yes, it is allowed. Then there is another issue was tackled, and there was one matter which had come up before disciplinary bench, that the person was actually having a general power, was full time in practice and was having a general power of attorney on behalf of client. Now, whether it is a other engagements, now friends, definitely it would amount to other engagements, because I can't be having, it is a practicing, मतलब general power attorney के नाम पे हम business कर रहे हैं, ऐसा हो जाएगा. Because typically people think that okay, I can do the business, relative के नाम पे, wife के नाम पे मैं कुछ agency लूंगा, general power of attorney लूंगा, and then I can start doing the activities. Please remember, general power of attorney would mean other engagements or other business. Specific power of attorney, yes, for tax purpose, for representation purpose, bank finance purpose. If I have a specific power of attorney, I can act on behalf of client. But general power of attorney लेके bank account operate करो, business transaction पे sign करो, no, it is not allowed to us for a practicing chartered accountants. So please let us take a specific power of attorney for a specific transactions which professionally we are allowed to do. Correct? So this is regarding the engagements, other engagements, etc. Let's tackle the other issue, which is commonly faced issue regarding the appointment as auditors. Now, friends, there is a clause 9 which talks that, clause 9 of first schedule, that if you have not observed the conditions or the provisions of Companies Act 2013 as far as the appointment of auditor is concerned, you will be held as guilty of misconduct. So as a practicing chartered accountant, whenever we accept an appointment of Companies Act, we are supposed to looking into all the conditions of appointments have been complied or not. Now, many times, company directors tell us, "Arey, I am appointing you," and young members typically, feel that okay, company client is coming to me, I should take it. We don't see that how the earlier auditor, whether earlier auditor has retired, removed, or resigned, and what has happened. कंपनी वाले बोल देते कि हम लोग रेजिग्नेशन ले लेंगे, आपको हम लोग अपॉइंट कर देते, आप ले लेना. Right? Now, resignation le lenge, it cannot be taken like that. Removal cannot happen like that. There has to be a proper, approval of the central government. Non-appointment of retiring auditor, there has to be a special resolution, special notice, etc. So all these conditions we must observe very carefully. And give a very live case or very important case. When I was a DC bench member, disciplinary committee bench member, in front of our bench only this matter had come up. There was a very senior chartered accountant. There is a very senior chartered accountant. Now, what happened was his ex-article clerk, who was doing some kind of a services, project finance services only, he brought a company's 4 years balance sheets to him. That company's financial proposal, some funding proposal was to be taken in bank. So he said, "Sir, this is 4 years balance sheets. This has to be signed. All filing have to be regularized. So you please sign it." Nothing is there in that. And there was nothing in those balance sheet. The activities company's activities had not started only. Now, he signed prospectively. Retrospectively signed nahi kiya unhone. He signed as on that date. Correct? And gave it to him. Then they got the funding. Then the company activity started. Some 4 or 5 years later, there was a dispute in that company directors. Now, some of the directors, which were disputing directors, which were against that person who was doing the funding activity, filed a case against this chartered accountant. They say that because the chartered accountant was brought to me many times, people make use of our provisions just to take revenge against each other. So disputing parties are different, but chartered accountants are made scapegoats. And unfortunately, we also don't have a proper documentation at that point of a time. And as Gyanji has told me, just highlight certain things. I want to highlight this very important thing. Now, what happened was this chartered accountant in good faith, अरे मेरा ही बच्चा है, चलो ठीक है, हमारा एक्स आर्टिकल है, बैंक में फाइनेंस का काम कर रहा है, उसने 4 बैलेंस शीट लेके आया, उसको हेल्प हो जाएगा, मैंने साइन कर दिया. Many times we do these kind of an activities in good faith. Now, when the case was filed against this senior chartered accountant, who was completely, very sincere man, it was found that there was no appointment letter at all issued to this person. Now, they said that we don't know, the disputing director said that we don't know that who has been appointed. These people have made financial fraud, balance sheets sign करके ले लिए, हमको मालूम भी नहीं है. We have never appointed. We never had an AGM. Now, we all know that the appointment of auditor in case of companies, are made in AGM. Now, AGM में appointment हुई कि नहीं हुई मेरी, मुझे कैसे पता चलेगा? Now, managing director may give me a letter. Better to insist some kind of a resolution, certified resolution by the chairman of the committee or the chairman managing director of the committee. And of course, now, by ADT1 and all those filing, things have become more simple. What the case I'm discussing was in earlier era. So ultimately, friends, we have to take this documentation in hand, that whether my appointment is proper or not. Now, this clause talks about appointment as far as company auditor only. But there are a lot of issues, lot of cases which come before disciplinary bench regarding appointment of as an auditor of trust or cooperative societies or other NGOs, etc. Now, many times this trust, I know a case where an audit was done for ₹1 for a trust by a chartered accountant. But his appointment was not proper, and some of the trustees filed a case against him. Now, we do a lot of things in a good faith. Let us take our documentation correctly. जल्दी उनको फाइल करनी है, उनकी फाइलिंग है, उनकी लास्ट डेट है, हमारे पास लास्ट डे में आ जाते हैं, अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर रहता नहीं है, right? So we have to take care of these things, and I'll explain you much better in the next provision also. And next provision is regarding the communication with the previous auditor. Now, number of cases comes as far as communication with the previous auditor. Now, clause 8 talks about that when a chartered accountant is appointed as an auditor, he has to communicate with another chartered accountant who was holding the position previously, right? And such communication should be made before acceptance of such appointment. Now, number of issues are there in this. Now, auditor means what? And audit means what? As I have explained on the screen also, it is applicable to all types of audits: statutory, internal, bank audits, concurrent audits, everything. Now, in an exaggerated manner, or if I go further, for all safety purposes, I should take it from stock auditor, for investigation audit, everything I should take. So communication is necessary. Mind you, friends, it's a communication. Now, typically, I'll give an example that on a first year, in tax audit, we know, friends, it's a turnover-based audit. So in a first year, suppose there was a tax audit, then the turnover dipped down. So second year, there is no tax audit. Third year, there is no tax audit. Fourth year, again, the party became eligible and tax auditor has to be appointed. Now, the fourth year, if a person is being appointed as a tax auditor, whether he should communicate with the first year's person, between there, बीच में 2 साल audit है ही नहीं. Now, friend, this clause talks about the position previously held by CA. Now, therefore, the chartered accountant who is appointed as a tax auditor in the fourth year, although there was no tax audit in the third year, first year who was an auditor, he has to communicate with that person. So whenever we are appointed as a tax auditor or any auditor for that matter, we must ask for the auditor for the previous year. And if they were not eligible for audit in the previous year, then the auditor of the year when last audit was done. And I have to communicate with that last auditor, right? So this communication with the earlier auditor means whenever the audit has happened, that last auditor. Now, a very important thing in this is that communication should be before acceptance of such appointment. Now, please mind you, not before signing, but before acceptance of such appointment. Again, I will explain this in a better manner by way of explaining one case which is already been decided by disciplinary bench. Now, what happened was, of course, that the days when I am saying the UDIN was not there in those days. So, what happened was a private limited company, tax audit and statutory audit generally is done in the same date. Now, what happened was, in one case, the auditor was appointed in place of another auditor. A chartered accountant was appointed as an auditor in place of another auditor. Now there was no dispute. The other earlier auditor also wanted to go surrender is this thing. He was not interested in that audit also. So, say for example, on 10th September, the chartered accountant was appointed. New person was appointed as an auditor. He communicated immediately on 10th September with the earlier auditor. Earlier auditor also gave, okay, no problem at all. You go ahead with an audit. So somewhere in the month of September, he completed audit, tax audit, etc., filed everything. Now we all know that company, in order to have a 21 days clear notice, he put the date on that audit report, statutory audit report, as 31st August. Now we all know we try to unnecessarily accommodate the clients in this scenario. Here, what happened was subsequently there was a dispute of that earlier chartered accountant with the client. He was doing some activities for those clients. There was a dispute regarding his fees, etc. So that chartered accountant filed case against the new chartered accountant, saying, new auditor, saying that you have written to me. I also said that I have no issues at all. You can go ahead with the work. But you have written to me on 10th September, whereas you have signed the company balance sheet on 31st of August. Whereas this clause says that the communication should be made before acceptance of an audit. So friends, whenever we do the documentation regarding the communication, it should be very clear. And my audit should commence after, my acceptance of the audit should be after such communication. And not only after, but reasonable time after the communication. Now, this communication can be made at present by three modes. That is registered post with acknowledgement, hand delivery with acknowledgement, and email communication, which is acknowledged. You'll find one thing common here, that is there has to be an acknowledgement by the earlier auditor. Simply you have sent and you have forgotten. Not like that. There has to be an acknowledgement of your communication. And typically, after acknowledgement, you must wait for some time. And after reasonable time, one can start the audit if some undisputed fee is not pending in case of a statutory audit. So there is one more condition here in terms of the Council General Guidelines, similar applicable to the change in auditors. Now, what Council General Guideline? Council has come up with these guidelines, and then we all know that Council guidelines are mandatory. You can see on the bottom of your screen that clause 1, part 2 of the second schedule. If you don't follow the guidelines of the Council, again, there's a misconduct. So typically, Council General Guideline talks, in 2008, talks about this clause, which says that a member, practicing chartered accountant shall not, if you see on the screen, shall not has been made bold. So there is no option to us. The practicing chartered accountant shall not accept an appointment as an auditor, right, of an entity if an undisputed audit fee of another chartered accountant for carrying statutory audit under Companies Act or any other various statutes has not been paid. First of all, let us understand that statutory audit, when we talk about, जब statutory audit बोलते हैं हमको लगता है company audit. Now this clause says that statutory audit under Companies Act or any other statute. So it is applicable even to the tax audit, because tax audit also is an audit under the statute. So if in case of such audit, statutory audit, if earlier auditor fees, undisputed audit fees is pending, has not been paid by the client, there is no question of communication in NOC. The new auditor shall not accept an appointment. There is no option given to us, friends. हमको लगता है कि NOC दे दिया उसने तो बस हो गई, बात खत्म हो गई. No. The guideline clearly says that shall not accept an audit. So in a combined manner, if I read this as well as clause 8, what does it say? In case of a statutory audit, when I am appointed as an auditor, I will first look whether the earlier auditor's undisputed audit fees, not other fees, only audit fees, has been paid or not. If that is not paid, there is no question of going ahead. I shall not accept an audit. If that is paid, then I shall communicate. I am required to communicate with the earlier auditor. After communication, In case of a statutory audit, if undisputed audit fees has been paid, right? After communication, I'm supposed to wait, acknowledged communication, I'm supposed to wait for a reasonable time. In case of other audits also, even if fees is not paid, after communication, I'm supposed to wait for some reasonable time. Reasonable time can be 7 days or 15 days, depending upon the facts and circumstances of each case, where they are located and all those things. So after acknowledgement of the communication, I have to wait for reasonable time, and then I can start my work. I can give an acceptance letter. But if the fees, statutory audit fees, undisputed statutory audit fees has not been paid, I shall not accept an appointment. Now, there are exceptions to it. If it's a sick unit, then this clause is not applicable. And undisputed audit, what does it mean? It means that the fees which is being provided in books of accounts and signed by auditor and audit board. So if a statutory auditor, other fees is pending, other than audit, then this clause is not applicable. So whenever we are accepting an appointments, one has to communication. Of course, appointment is the first thing one has to look into it. Second is this important aspect of communication. And in communication also, friends, one has to be very careful whether this, in case of statutory audit, whether the earlier auditor's undisputed fees has been paid or not has to be checked, right? Now, under this new code, if I can go back again, earlier slide, and you can see the last pointer. Under this new code in volume 1, there has been a duty cast upon the earlier auditor also. That generally, it happens that I have communicated, the earlier auditor has accepted, acknowledged the communication, but he doesn't write back to me. Now, volume 1 has put a onus or duty on the previous auditor that if I have written, see, there are two aspects in communication which I can write. Number one, that I have been appointed as an auditor, whether you have any professional objection or professional issue in this regard. Number one. And number two, and which is very important thing, that whether you would like to highlight or bring to my notice any facts which, in your opinion, important for me to carry out this audit. Now, if this second part, if I put in my communication, then volume 1 has made it mandatory for the outgoing auditor also that he should communicate to me if he has something in mind or if he doesn't have something in mind also. So our communication letter also should be drafted in such a manner that there is a compulsion on there is a duty casted on the previous auditor also to communicate. So this is regarding change in auditor and change in communication. Number of issues arise out of it, right? Now, some of these I have already discussed while discussing this provision. Important issue is that what happens if the earlier auditor is not available? Say, for example, sometimes unfortunately the earlier auditor might have expired. Then what can be case? Naturally, this provision will not be applicable. Now, what if the firm has split? Suppose A has signed the earlier audit report for ABC and company. Now, later on, that firm has split. A has become separate, B and C have become separate. Now, whether I should communicate with A or B and C? Definitely, it is a chartered accountant, so I have to communicate with A. Right? So there are so many things. If the previous auditor has voluntarily resigned or surrendered a COP, then whether I should communicate or not? Yes, I have to communicate because it is duty casted upon me. Right? And again, what is the purpose behind it? That second part is the main purpose of communication. That is, if there is something, why he has resigned, why he has stopped taking that audit, if there is something which in his opinion is important for me to consider, then I must understand that. And therefore, the duty has been casted upon me to communicate with the earlier auditor. Now, there can be a lot of issues regarding dispute or not dispute. People may say that, okay, undisputed fee ko ye karna hai na, undisputed fee pending hai, to hi kam problem hai na, to humko dispute bana denge usko. Ek mail dal denge ki humko fee aapki barabar nahi lagti hai karke. Now, friend, dispute should not be an artificial dispute. There should be a real dispute in that regard. So when I talk about undisputed audit fee, it means that if it is there in the appointment letter and if it is the work has been executed properly, artificial dispute cannot be created in this regard by the client. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि क्लाइंट बोल देता है ठीक है ना, आपको अनडिस्प्यूटेड फी पेंडिंग है इसलिए आपको नहीं कर सकते हो ना, नो प्रॉब्लम, मैं मेल लिख देता हूँ सीए को, अर्लियर सीए, पहले वाले सीए को, कि आपसे हमारा डिस्प्यूट है, हमको आपका काम पसंद नहीं आया, हम फी नहीं देंगे करके. नाउ दैट इज नॉट अ डिस्प्यूट. प्लीज रिमेंबर फ्रेंड्स, there has to be some real dispute between the client and the earlier chartered accountant. Next issue, charging of fees. Now, whether I am allowed to charge the fees on contingency or percentage basis, typically the answer is no, but there are certain exceptions given to us under regulation 192. और ये जो exceptions दिए हुए हैं, in this scenario, I can charge the fee on the percentage basis also. Fundraising activity, I can charge the fee on a percentage basis. Insolvency professional, I can charge the fee on the basis of contingency and this thing. Of course, certain conditions are there in that, but I can charge the fees on the percentage basis. For non-assurance services to non-audit client, I can charge the fees on the basis of contingencies. So in regulation 192 आप पढ़ेंगे तो you will be very much clear कि कौन से सिनारियो में हम परसेंटेज बेसिस पे फी चार्ज कर सकते हैं, राइट? सो रिसीवर, लिक्विडेटर, एवरीथिंग हैज बीन मेंशन्ड, बट जनरली आई कैन नॉट चार्ज द फीस ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ प्रॉफिट, परसेंटेज ऑफ प्रॉफिट्स, और कंटिंजेंट अपॉन फाइंडिंग्स और रिजल्ट, right? So if my result is like this, if I something happens, I will definitely charge this much fee. If it doesn't happen, I will not charge this much fees. That kind of a conditional fees should not be there. And very important difference, I would like to highlight to an issue which is mentioned at the end. This clause doesn't only talks about charging the fees. This clause talks about offering to charge fee also. So if I offered to charge the fee, ultimately मैंने charge नहीं किया, but मैंने जब offer दे दिया, acceptance हो गई, जब whatever terms of engagement हमने decide कर ली, तब अगर मैंने कहा है कि फलाना फलाना चीज हो जाती है, मेरी फी इतनी है, फलाना होती है तो मेरी फी इतनी है, अल्टीमेटली मैंने फी एक ही चार्ज की है, राइट? मिनिमम फी जो डिसाइड होगी थी वही चार्ज की है, बट स्टिल इफ आई ऑफर्ड टू चार्ज द फी, देन ऑल्सो इट इज नॉट करेक्ट. So when we are dealing with the client, when we are discussing with the client, then in that case also on the offer letters, we should not offer the fees in a conditional manner. There are exceptions. In these exceptional circumstances, definitely, or exceptional situations, we can definitely charge the fees on the conditional basis. Next is the confidentiality and custody of the client's asset. Very important. Now, as Gyanji has rightly mentioned initially, fundamental principle talks about confidentiality. So when I'm handling the matters of my client, I'm not only talking about the audit, any professional engagement, I must be having complete confidentiality about the client's records. I cannot disclose the information about the client to others. Not only the fundamental principle, but in our law, our second schedule of the Act, clause 1, first part, talks about the confidentiality aspect. So I cannot disclose the information of my client without asking him, unless he permits me, right? Or if it is stipulated in the law, right, then only I can give. So only in two scenarios, information of the client can be disclosed to the others. If the client permits me to disclose, or if the law requires me to disclose. In any other case, I cannot disclose the information of the client to others. Now, if suppose a court requires, now under law it is required, definitely I can disclose. Typically, I have received one issue from one of the chartered accountant that police station से फोन आया था कि फलाना क्लाइंट के फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स हमको चाहिए. Now, friends, I know it's very difficult, but if there's such kind of a thing is there, we must politely tell to the police station, आप हमको 2 लाइन का एक लेटर दे दो सर प्लीज, बिकॉज मेरे कोड में ऐसा है कि अगर लॉ ने कहा है, कोई लॉ कहता है कि ये इंफॉर्मेशन देनी चाहिए तो दे सकता हूं मैं, तो आप एक लॉ की सेक्शन लेके मुझे 2 लाइन का लेटर दे दो, मैं इंफॉर्मेशन दे दूंगा. Just because there's a call, if I disclose the information, client can file a case against me. I'll give you a couple of cases in this confidentiality. One chartered accountant was doing a bank finance work for his client. Now, in that bank finance work, he had taken a special power of attorney. Definitely, he had a power of attorney to have a discussion with the bankers. Now, during that discussion, the bankers asked, we want the details of the godowns of the client. और कहाँ पे क्या stock लिखा है हमको चाहिए. Now, he could have, instead of asking a client and going ahead, he was knowing it. So, for doing the thing fast, in a very good faith, right, he disclosed everything to the bankers. कि ये फलाना फलाना जगह पे stock पड़ा हुआ है. These are the go downs addresses. Now, unfortunately for that chartered accountant, this client did not want to disclose one go down. There were some reasons. Maybe some illegal activities were going on in that go down. And he faced ultimately a problem because of that go down came in a public domain, which he didn't want to do it. And he filed a case against chartered accountant. Why you have disclosed my go downs to this? Unfortunately, ये बेचारा chartered accountant बहुत good faith में काम करने गया for the purpose of his client. But in a hurry, in an eagerness to do a service, we are forgetting the documentation part of it. And therefore, my urge to you is that take a proper documentation of kind. और एक बहुत lively example देता हूँ. एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के पास पूरी फैमिली की फाइल्स थी, इनकम टैक्स की फाइल्स थी. एक दिन वो फैमिली की डॉटर इन लॉ अप्रोच हो गई कि मुझे फैमिली के पूरे इनकम टैक्स पेपर्स चाहिए. जनरली वो इंटरेक्ट करती थी कभी कभी चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट से, तो उसको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं था. चलो पेपर के इनकम टैक्स पेपर्स के कॉपीज निकाल के वो डॉटर इन लॉ को दे दिए. It was ultimately found out that there was a divorce case going on, and that daughter-in-law wanted these income tax family papers for quantification of alimony amount. And therefore, all the entire family members got wild with the chartered accountant. That why you have disclosed, why you have given our papers to our daughter-in-law? We had not given you permission. हमको लगता है कि फैमिली हमारी क्लाइंट है. प्लीज रिमेंबर, इंडिविजुअल हमारा क्लाइंट होता है. बहुत बुरा लगेगा क्लाइंट को अगर हमने कहा ठीक है आपके बेटे को आपके पेपर दे दूं क्या, लेकिन पूछना जरूरी है फ्रेंड्स. प्लीज रिमेंबर दिस. Confidentiality is very important, and confidentiality is not required only for audit. It is required. That's why I have highlighted the word for professional engagement. So any kind of a professional engagement you are doing, you must observe complete confidentiality. The second important thing is the custody of clients' assets. Now, client assets we have with us and also using the client's money. I'll just read this clause for the purpose of better understanding of our members. Clause 10, Part 1, first schedule says that the chartered accountant in practice shall keep monies of his client other than the fees for remuneration money, right, in a separate bank account and use such money for the purposes for which they are intended within the reasonable time. Now it talks about using the money within the reasonable time. I'll give you one example again by way of case, and in which I was only the member of the bench. What happened was the chartered accountant was doing a tax payment service, for client. He was having a separate bank account, no problem at all. Separate bank account में पैसा आता था, उसमें से clients का tax payment कर देते थे वो. Now what happened was in case of an advance tax, let us assume September महीना था शायद. 1st September को एक substantial amount cash money was deposited by a client in his bank account, chartered accountant's bank account for payment of advance tax. This CA also paid the advance tax on 14th September, well within time, no legal problem at all as far as income tax is concerned, right? तो पूरा काम हो गया, टाइम में हो गया, सब हो गया. 2-3 साल के बाद डिस्प्यूट हो गया क्लाइंट का और चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट का. क्लाइंट को तो पॉइंट चाहिए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के. He found out this point, this clause, and filed a case against chartered accountant saying that I had deposited my money with you on 1st of September. You have deposited advance tax on 14th September. So you have used my money for 13 days. You have not paid this money for the purpose for which it is intended within the reasonable time. Now, what is the reasonable time? 13 दिन रखने की जरूरत क्या है पैसा मेरा? मैंने दिया था 1 तारीख को, आप 2 तारीख 3 तारीख तो पेमेंट करना चाहिए था एडवांस टैक्स का. Now friends, we again work on a lot of confidence on client and good faith. In this matter, we also know that this matter is artificially has been taken by client. So we asked for the bank account statement. Now, in that bank account statement, although the balance was there in the account, account, there were receipt and payment entries. So on first in, first out basis, that money have been deemed to have been utilized by the chartered accountant. Now, friends, therefore, whenever we are using the money of the client, we are having the money of the client, please use it in a reasonable time for the purpose for which it is intended. Now you will say that, अरे हम तो यही करते बैठेंगे क्या कि 1 तारीख को किसी का पैसा आया, 2 तारीख को भरो, 3 तारीख को आया, 4 तारीख को भरो. You don't need to do like that. You can develop a SOP in the firm and give it to the client. कि एडवांस टैक्स पेमेंट हम 10 से 14 तारीख के बीच में ही करेंगे या 10 से 15 तारीख के बीच में ही करेंगे. आप भले कभी भी पैसा डिपॉजिट करो, तो आपका पैसा 10 तारीख के पहले हमको क्रेडिट होना चाहिए. वी विल मेक द पेमेंट बिटवीन 10th or 11th to 15th. Like that, we can develop some SOPs and keep ourselves safe in this scenario. Many times ऐसा होता है ना कि रिटर्न फाइलिंग की डेट होती है, ऐसे टैक्स भरना होता है, हम क्लाइंट को बोलते हैं कि चलो ठीक है 1 लाख रुपया डिपॉजिट करो, जो आता है वो पैसा भर देंगे हम. अल्टीमेटली सपोज 30,000 रुपया टैक्स आ जाता है, ऐसे टैक्स 70,000 रुपया पड़ा है. हम बोल देते हैं क्लाइंट को, सर 70,000 30,000 टैक्स आ गया, 70,000 रुपया पड़ा हुआ है. क्लाइंट भी बोल देता है रख दो सर, नो प्रॉब्लम, हम फी में एडजस्ट करेंगे बाद में. बहुत सारी बातें हमारी फोन पे होती है. लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स डिस्कस्ड ऑन फोन. Please, my suggestion to my colleagues is take it in writing from the client. Otherwise, this clause will be a difficult clause for us. Client, custody of client's asset. Many times we keep client's asset. हमको छोड़ के जा रहा है, फी नहीं दी है, चलो मैं नहीं रिलीज करूंगा, बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट रिलीज नहीं करेंगे. We cannot do like that. There's an ethical standard board decision on that. Now, I have mentioned here one pointer and very important, use of digital signature. To my mind, digital signature is a client's asset. Now, when we have digital signature with us, I mean, it's very difficult to prove that you have yourself not used it unnecessarily. So, better to take always an authority for using the digital signature. Better to take a properly worded authority. It's better to say that, your person has come to me with this digital signature for filing this. Right? So take a proper authority from the clients saying that my person I am sending with digital signatures, kindly allow him to sign. Kindly allow him to sign my ITR digitally and upload from your office. So these kind of letters, documentations are very much necessary. लगता हमको है कि बहुत बर्डन है, ज्यादा बर्डन है नहीं है. वी कैन डेवलप सम SOPs so that we are safe, because it's very difficult later on to defend. Then there are certain issues regarding the signing of the balance sheets and the auditing financial statements and reporting, etc. These clauses are very important, friends. I'm not going in detail of these clauses, but if we don't do the audit, ज्ञान जी ने वापस फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल ऑफ प्रोफेशनल कॉम्पिटेंस एंड ड्यू केयर कहा है. So all these principles require that whatever activities we are doing as far as our professional, financial reporting is concerned, we must exercise complete due diligence and professional competence. अगर हमारे पास knowledge नहीं है, it is very difficult later on to justify. So non-disclosure of material facts, non-failure to report material misstatements, proper evidence नहीं लेना, proper documentation नहीं लेना client से, all this would lead to misconducts and violation of this fundamental principle and code of ethics. I'll give you a couple of examples in this by way of cases only. In one matter, it so happened that there was a construction company. Now, that is a small time construction company doing 1 or 2 construction jobs at a time. एक्का दुक्का मतलब construction करते थे. Now, in 1 year, it so happened that there was no construction activity at all. They didn't have much of the fixed assets. They had mainly the surplus funds. So what they did was, there was no construction activity. So surplus funds, they invested in the mutual funds. So in the balance sheet of that year, there was no construction activity. There was only a major assets of mutual fund investments and major income of mutual fund dividend. Auditor felt that there is no activity, no issues at all. What is there to be looked into? Balance sheet sign हो गई, file हो गई, ROC में file हो गई. Now, friends, you may be knowing that as per the Reserve Bank of India guidelines, there is something called as 50-50 rules. It says that if the 50% of the assets of the company are financial assets, and 50% of income of the company is a financial income, then that company is NBFC and it has to get itself registered as NBFC. If it is not registered as NBFC, the auditor has to make a special report to Reserve Bank of India. अभी तो खैर वो कारों में भी आ गया, लास्ट क्लॉज है कारों में कि if it is an NBFC, whether it has taken a registration or not. Now, this was a construction company, became an NBFC because of this 50-50 rule. Now, chartered accountants many times feel कि अरे हमको तो मालूम ही नहीं है ये. And that is what a fundamental principle is: professional competence and due care. Whether I'm professionally competent, in fact, when there is no business or there is something different than the business, my professional skepticism make me feel इसमें मुझे जाना ही चाहिए whether other कोई law applicable हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है. And I have to find out that thing and then do the financial reporting. Otherwise, it will be a failure to report material misstatement, right? Failure to disclose the material facts. Now, that is very important. I'll give you another example. There's another case where the major amount of loan was there in the company's balance sheet. On 31st March, the major entry came. Let us assume that 3 crore 40 lakhs rupees was loan. 40 lakhs rupees was interest. So 3 crore rupees amount came in the bank statement on 31st March. Now, it was shown as other loans and the balance sheet was filed. Later on, it was observed that, it was noticed that 3 crores rupees was taken over by asset reconstruction company. Now, that asset reconstruction company's claim in the court became weak because in an audited financial statement, their name was not there. And they filed a case against this chartered accountant saying that you have not disclosed the material facts in the balance sheet. Now, this chartered accountant pleaded that I have asked for this and hum log ne loan to show kiya hai. Now, friends, you all know that in case of companies, Schedule 3 is important. Now, Schedule 3 requires, in case of loan, there are a lot of disclosures in Schedule 3. आप अगर वो नहीं disclose करेंगे तो material misstatement है. Now, this chartered accountant pleaded that I have asked for the information, but information मिली नहीं मुझे. But हम लोग audit report में तो लिख लेते हैं, as per the information and explanation given to us. And if you are not able to get insufficient information, there is again a qualified, you should have qualified it. So friends, whenever we are doing an audits and financial reporting, we have to take this matters in that right perspective and do the audit, execute the audit accordingly. Next is solicitation and promotion, advertisements, etc. This is a very huge subject. I'll be dealing it very quickly in 10 minutes because I can take 1.5 hour session on this itself. Now, friends, as a chartered accountant in practice, it is always said that हमको ये कुछ करना नहीं है, हमको advertisement नहीं करना है, हमको कुछ नहीं करना है. Typically, friends, there are clause 5, 6, and 7 are in relation to this kind of a provisions, or these kind of issues. Clause 5 talks about that as a practicing chartered accountant, I cannot secure the business from some means which are not open to me. So I cannot go on soliciting, I cannot go for asking the work, I cannot make rowing inquiry. जैसे मैं CA बन जाता हूँ, 10 जगह पे मैं letter लिख दूंगा कि I have become a chartered accountant, I want to get empanel with your company, with your bank. So these kind of things I can't do. I can't use others' influence in getting the work. Right? So these are not allowed to me as a practicing chartered accountant. Clause 6 talks about solicitation. Now, as a practicing chartered accountant, I cannot solicit the client. I'm not allowed to solicit the client or any professional work. And for that solicitation, I cannot do this kind of a solicitation directly or indirectly by any means, by circular, by advertisement, by personal communication, by interview. Even if suppose I'm called for an interview, while in giving that interview, I cannot mention, ठीक है, कुछ आपको difficulty है तो मेरे पास आइए, मेरा number ये है. Now, that is also a solicitation. In a personal communication, if somebody asks a query to me, while answering that query, I cannot say that, okay, for further thing, you can contact me anytime. So these kind of things on WhatsApp, I am seeing some of the messages, right? That we have done this work for such and such reputed company. So anybody having any work like this can approach us. So that these are the solicitations. So any such solicitation, Advertisement is one mode. I cannot do that, right? But whether I can do advertisement or not, there's a different issue. I'll tackle it later. But I can't do a solicitation by way of advertisement, personal communication, interview. There are two exceptions to it. One is, suppose application or request or invite to secure a professional work from another chartered accountant in practice. So I can request another chartered accountant in practice for a professional work. Please remember, friend, there are two things important, is that is another word and practice word. So many times chartered accountants put on a WhatsApp that I'm interested in doing this work. If anybody is having the work, kindly forward it to me. I will do it. Now on WhatsApp, it may be a group of chartered accountant, but this clause talks about another chartered accountant. So I can make request to only one chartered accountant at a time, and that too a chartered accountant in practice, right? WhatsApp group में तो employment के CA भी हो सकते हैं. So please be careful while asking. But yes, any other practicing chartered accountant, I can go formally, I can request for a work, no problem at all. Second exception is responding to the tender. Now, council has allowed, as per tendering guidelines, to respond to certain class of tenders and not all class of tenders. Now, what are those tendering guidelines? Very quickly, right? Whichever work, if any services or areas which are exclusively reserved for chartered accountant, I shall not respond to the tender at all unless the minimum fees is prescribed in the same. If that service or area is open to all professionals, I can freely respond to the tender even if no fees kind of a thing is mentioned in the tender. So typically, the work which is open to all, say internal audit, it is open to all. Correct? Kind of a forensic audit, open to all. System audit, open to all. So all these things which are open to all, if there's any tender, accounting work, actually open to all. So these tenders, I can very well respond. But the areas which are exclusively reserved for chartered accountants, say for example, any certification under any law which is required by CA, any audit under any law which is required to be done by CA. Now, such kind of a tender, I cannot respond. I can only respond to those tender if the minimum fees is prescribed in a tender. Now, other solicitation by other modes are also not allowed by issuing an advertisement. I can do an advertisement for, say, hiring a staff. I can do an advertisement for doing some silver jubilee, golden jubilee function of my firm. But there should not be any solicitation from that advertisement. A factual information can be given. Such and such function is there at such and such place, such and such time, and so on and so forth. Say, so for example, golden jubilee function of my firm is going to happen. I can give venue, time, and how to come and all those things. Or at the most attire, which attire should be there. I cannot mention that we have done the great work for last 50 years. We have attained a good reputation, and to forward this reputation and celebrate this achievement, we are going to have this jubilee. These kind of an advertisement cannot be given. Factual advertisements one can give, and there is no problem at all. There is another issue, another such enabling provision I'll discuss very immediately in the next slide. Now, there are certain where networks are also which are there, which are the network which are not of chartered accountants. Now, as a chartered accountant, I cannot be a practicing chartered accountant. I cannot be a part of any network which is not a chartered accountant, which is not a network of chartered accountant registered with ICA. Now, this is very important, friends, because a lot of business networks come together and ask us to become a member of our network. We'll get some work. Please don't become a member of such network. Similarly, there are certain service provider aggregators. They maintain a data electronically with them. हमको फोन भी आते हैं कि आपका डेटा हमारे पास है, हमारे पास रजिस्टर करो. I don't want to mention, since I am an online session, I don't want to mention their names, right? But they typically keep the data and they say that हमारे पास अगर कुछ काम आ गया तो हम आपको forward करेंगे. Now, we are not supposed to be a part of such service provider aggregators also. Many times people get agitated. अरे हमको कहा आप मौका ही नहीं दे रहे, इंस्टीट्यूट मौका नहीं दे रहे किधर भी ये करने के लिए. Now, therefore, friends, Ethical Standard Board last year has come up with a CA Connect portal. Now, in that CA Connect portal, we can very well register our firm. We can mention our detail. We can mention our services areas also. But I know most of us have not yet registered. I would appeal from this forum to get your firm registered in the CA Connect portal. Typically, if suppose you register on that CA Connect portal and somebody wants to say find out a chartered accountant or a firm of chartered accountant in Ghaziabad, say doing a due diligence work or bank finance funding work or any kind of a certification work, they can very well find out from this CA Connect portal. Go scroll it to Ghaziabad and find out who are the chartered accountants doing that. But unfortunately, we are not able to take up to the business community because many of our members, rather most of our members, have not yet registered. हम लोग बाहर सर्विस प्रोवाइडर एग्रीगेटर के पास रजिस्टर करने को तैयार है पैसा देके, whereas institute has given this free facility to us, we are still not able to do it. So my appeal to you, please register on CA Connect portal. Right, I will. I mean, if you can just visit to a website, Ethical Standard Board website, you can find the CA Connect portal tab and you can register yourself. Entire information is pre-filled. Right, you can add a certain portion and you are getting yourself registered there. Right, so you can get such work. So don't register outside aggregators. It is a violation of our code. We are very well providing this facility to the members. Coming to the next clause. Now, this clause talks about advertisement of professional and other achievements or attainments. Typically, what I can write on my write-ups, what I can write on my stationery, visiting cards, etc., on the boards. Now, as a professional, see, again, fundamental principle, one of the fundamental principle of ethics is professional behavior. Now, when I'm a professional and acting as a professional, I'm not supposed to go on saying कि मैं ऐसा हूँ वैसा हूँ मेरे पास ये डिग्री है वो डिग्री है, and therefore professional attainments or services, I can't go on expressing in the public, and therefore this clause is there that what kind of things I can do. Now, which degrees are allowed to be printed on the card or signboards or or letterheads? The chartered accountancy degree, the degrees of any university which are established by law in India, and the degrees of an institutions which are recognized by the council. So typically other institutions, other sister body institutions, these degrees are recognized by the council. So these I can put. In addition to these degrees, I can put diplomas of ICAI on the visiting card or stationery. Please remember, friends, diploma and not certificates. At present, there are, according to me, 4 or 5 diplomas: DIRM, that is Insurance Risk Management; DMBF, that is Management Business Finance; DISA, Information System Audit; and International Taxation. So, and I think if I'm not wrong, other laws also, WTO law also. So only these diplomas I can print. I have seen many cards, so and so chartered accountant, certified forensic auditor. There's nothing like that. If you have done a certificate course of the institute, you cannot put it on the card or stationery. So such professional attainments, such things cannot be printed on the card. If I'm a socially active somewhere, I cannot print those social attainments on card. Karanji has mentioned initially, I'll just make some correction in that. If I'm a council member, I can have a council member card. No problem. But in my firm, I cannot put a central council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Right? I can have my own cards. I can print those cards, no problem at all. So practice and social life, इसमें mistake या इसमें complications और इसमें mixture नहीं होना चाहिए. Right? Similarly, in practice also, I cannot print that I'm expert in so field, I'm expert in such and such field. I cannot print. That's why you can see I cannot mention that I am a finance consultant. Or typically हम बहुत सारे कार्ड देखते हैं कि such and such firm, chartered accountant, partner so and so firm, head of GST vertical or head of GST department. ऐसा देना हमारे कार्ड पे अलाउड नहीं है. Only 2 specializations are allowed to be given on the visiting cards stationery, that is insolvency professional and registered valuers. Other than that, I cannot give the card. Secondly, I have seen there was one query received that whether I can print a chartered accountant and company secretary on my card. Now, friends, designation, you can put only one designation, professional designation. Chartered accountant is a designation. Company secretary is a designation. CA or CS or FCA or FCS is a degree. Degrees I can put on card, but designations I cannot put. I can put only one designation, that is chartered accountant, on my card. Right? CA prefix, whether I can use? Yes, definitely I can use the CA prefix. Now, there is one proviso to this clause 7, and which is very important to understand, and very quickly I'll take, and then I think this solicitation I'll proceed further. That is, as a practicing chartered accountant, I may advertise, a practicing chartered accountant may advertise through write-up setting out the services provided by him or his firm, right? Provided such guidelines is following the guidelines issued in this regard by the institute, by the council. So here, whether a practicing chartered accountant can advertise or not, yes, may advertise. But how he can advertise? Through write-up. And write-up is nothing but the factual information about that chartered accountant or a firm. And therefore, friends, whether I can advertise as a practicing chartered accountant, yes. But whether I can do solicitation, promotion, no. That cannot be done. Now, these write-up guidelines are very important guidelines, and we can prepare a write-up according to that. In a recent World Congress also, we have allowed firms to advertise in our souvenirs through this write-up. Now, if we are making this write-up, our write-up according to these guidelines, then I can issue this write-up and circulate it and publish in print or electronic mode, any manner. I can put it in the first page of Times of India also, no problem. Correct? But this should be as per this write-up guideline. Now, I'm not going in detail of these write-up guidelines, but if you go through these guidelines, advertisement guidelines, in which the write-up guidelines regarding write-ups have been mentioned, it is mainly talks about that you can inform or you can mention something which is a factual information about your firm. You cannot use a solicitation information unless it is an award, unless it's a recognition by the central state government or regulatory bodies. Right? My firm locally might have Ghaziabad association ne humko award diya rahega, best professional award to me. I cannot mention like that. But yes, Government of India has given me some award, I can mention that. Right? So award, endorsements, etc. I cannot write. Fees charge, kitna fees hum charge karne wale hai, all these information will not be there. But yes, my firm details, my firm partner's name, their passport size photographs, services rendered by the firm, all these can be given in my write-up. Right? And I can put this write-up on print and electronic mode. There is no problem, no restriction at all. Any such word, catchword hote hai, ki hamara work is workshop and these kind of things, these cannot be there in this write-up. So typically, आपको जब profile बनाने को कहते हैं firm का, that will be governed by this write-up or these advertisement guidelines. So when we prepare the profile of the firm, it should be strictly as per these guidelines. It is allowed to us. Positive side, देखना please. We can do it, but while doing it, we should be very careful that we are not leading for a solicitation. So this is regarding the solicitation and advertisement. Let us move to further thing, preparation and certificates and reports. Typically, बहुत बार इशू ये आ जाता है कि प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट मैं सर्टिफाई कर सकता हूं क्या? हमारे पास बहुत क्लाइंट्स इंफॉर्मेशन लेके आते हैं कि हमारा प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट सर्टिफाई करना है, and we are not allowed to do it. Now, whether I am allowed to do it, signing a project report, my clause 3, part 1, first schedule, second schedule clearly says that I cannot allow, as a practicing chartered accountant, I cannot allow my name to be used in connection with the estimated earnings, which are contingent upon future transactions. Because when I write, say, my client asks me to sign the project report, हम क्या करते हैं, क्या करके sign करेंगे? Why my signature is required on project report? Whether I am certifying that 3, 4, 5 साल में ये ऐसा होने वाला है आगे जाके, how can I do it as a chartered accountant? What does qualification, whether my qualification teaches me to forecast like this? No. So therefore, such kind of a certification, signings, etc. is not allowed to us. Now, positive side, let us think about positive side. तो हम नहीं कर सकते क्या? बैंक अगर बोलती है कि क्लाइंट को आप प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट क्लाइंट चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट से साइन करके लाओ, नहीं तो हम नहीं करेंगे. तो अगर मैं नहीं करूंगा तो और किसी के पास जाएंगे तो क्या करूं? सर, आपके पास इंस्टीट्यूट के पब्लिकेशन है. There is the Standards on Assurance Engagement 3400, which talks about examination of prospective financial information. If you go in that standard, it clearly gives us guideline how I can create a report for project report को certify करने के लिए मैं कैसा report बना सकता हूं. I can make a report. In that report, it is very clearly mentioned. Two things I can certify in this. Number one, that the assumptions which have been used for the purpose of making this project report, whether these assumptions have been made on the reasonable basis, and number two, whether these calculations have been made properly or not. Today, there is no time. There can be full session on this, on preparation of certification of report, certificates and report. But there are a lot of publications by the institute. बहुत बार क्वेरी ये आ जाती है कि ITR कॉपीज सर्टिफाई करने को कहा, मैं कर सकता हूं क्या? क्या करके करेंगे? What is a certification in ITR copies? Turnover certificates. क्या? What is a certificate? How we are going to certify it? Now, friends, that is why I'm just highlighting you this. As I said, there can be full session on this. There are various publications of the institute under which I can prepare reports and certificates. There is a guidance note also at the bottom, if you can see, guidance note on the reports and certificates for special purposes. What is important is we must understand what is being asked from us. And if we can do it in that manner, I think there are a number of, we can get a guidance from these publications. Say, for example, ITR verification. Now, why the bankers want the ITR verified by the chartered accountants? Do they want a certification from chartered accountant that जो कहाँ है वैसे ही उनका टैक्स बराबर है और इनकम वही है करके? We can't do that. We might have filed it, but there may be other income also. We have done it on the basis of information. So can we say that on the basis of information this is correct? No, I can't say. I should not say that this is correct. कल अगर ये information के basis पे legal interpretation गलत हो गई तो, so bankers को चाहिए क्या हमसे? We should ask ourselves. Bankers only want that these returns have been actually filed under the income tax, on the income tax side. और यही हमको करना है. तो guidance note अगर आप देखोगे, guidance note for reports and certificate for special purpose, you can very well prepare such a report that हमने कहाँ से चेक किया, हमने साइट से चेक किया, हमने साइट से डाउनलोड किया है. You can very well give disclaimers in that कि we are not responsible for this income tax information which is given by client. तो हम खाली केवल ये वेरीफाई कर रहे हैं कि ये रिटर्न फाइल हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ है. Right? So we can develop this reports and certificates on the basis of guidance note. So please remember, please don't sign on anything and everything comes in front of you. Right? I can give one example here and then I'll move forward. आशीष, हमारे पास कितना 6:45 बजे बंद करना है ना ये? ठीक है. There is one matter, I'll just give you a classic case again. There was one trust, a community trust. A chairperson of that community trust was an ex-army man, so he was very respected in the community. But there were two groups typically, and one group became powerful and they removed this person from trusteeship. Right? Now, after they removed him, they prepared a balance sheet and they showed some amount which was taken by him for some expenditure. They showed that amount as recoverable from him and prepared the balance sheet. Now, as I said, he was an ex-army man, a reputed person in that community. So he insisted that this is not correct. आपने बराबर information लिया नहीं है. You again get it done properly. ये मेरे पास voucher पड़े हुए थे, मैंने दिए हुए थे आपको, अपने voucher लिए नहीं. So the elderly people from that community sat again and they said that okay, we will get it done again. आपका जो recoverable है हम लोग verify करेंगे बराबर से. And they appointed another chartered accountant to verify this recoverable amount. Unfortunately, that chartered accountant who was appointed, he verified that amount. What he did was, he prepared the financial statements again completely and submitted it to trust. Now, झगड़ा तो था ही उनमें, तो उन्होंने केस फाइल किया चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के ऊपर कि आपको तो कहा गया था कि आप खाली ये रिकवरेबल अमाउंट वेरीफाई करके आप हमको देंगे. यू हैव डन कंप्लीट फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स ऑडिट, whereas you have not done the audit at all and you have signed on the financial statement. हमने अभी जो फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग का जो एक स्लाइड देखा उसमें पहला ही क्लॉज है which says that if you sign on the financial statements without verifying it, again it's a misconduct. Now this person had signed on the financial statement, but he had not verified entire financial statements. He had only verified one aspect of it, that is recoverable amount from that person. Now friends, there is a standards on related services right, which is talks about SRS 4400, which is there in front of your screen. Engagement to perform the agreed upon procedures regarding financial information. That chartered accountant could have given this report in this SRS 4400, but he recasted entire financial statement, which was not expected of him. तो हम जब रिपोर्ट सर्टिफिकेट बनाते हैं, प्लीज लुक इनटू आईसीआई पब्लिकेशन. बहुत सारे पब्लिकेशन आईसीआई ने दिए हुए हैं, बहुत सारी गाइडेंस भी दी हुई है. ओनली थिंग इज दैट हम अपने आप को वैल्यू नहीं करते हैं, क्योंकि क्या है ना, सर्टिफिकेट मांगा है ना, आईटीआर सर्टिफाई करके देना है, दे दो, साइन करके दे दिया. इसमें हमने एक्चुअली हमारी सिग्नेचर दांव पे लगाई है, हम देखते भी नहीं है. वी कैन वेरी वेल प्रिपेयर अ प्रॉपर रिपोर्ट. टेल द क्लाइंट दैट आप रिपोर्ट, वो गाइडेंस नोट भी देखेंगे, वो गाइडेंस नोट भी एक डिस्क्लेमर है, दिस इज गिवन ओनली फॉर दिस पर्पस. तो हर बार क्लाइंट को चाहिए तो हर बार आपके पास आना चाहिए, एंड हर बार आपने फीस चार्ज कर सकते हैं हम लोग. वी कैन चार्ज द फीस टू द क्लाइंट, right? But we have to value our signatures, we have to see these publications and do the practice accordingly. Couple of things which are again important. Know your client norms. ESB Ethical Standard Board had brought in a volume 2 of the Code of Ethics of this Know Your Client norms. There is a proper guidance that what kind of an information we can keep from the client, right? And it has to be there, because many times under these money laundering laws, later on that client absconds and we don't have any information about the client. So let us have the information of the client in our hand, so that, of course, there's again a provision in our Code of Ethics that know your client norms have to be followed. ये आगे नहीं जा रहा है. The next thing is regarding the, just take the slide, next slide. There's a technical issue. इसके ऊपर नहीं जा रहा. ज्ञान जी, आप नेक्स्ट स्लाइड देख पा रहे हैं? इधर हमारे इधर नहीं मूव हो रहा है. हाँ, नहीं,
हाँ जी, आपकी स्लाइड दिख रही है सर.
ठीक है. Okay.
Thank you.
The next information regarding the fees overdue. Now, बीच में एक इशू ऐसा आया था कि बहुत व्हाट्सएप पे वगैरह घूम रहा था कि मेरे क्लाइंट का अगर पैसा मुझे मिला नहीं है, my fees I have not received, I should not do next year's audit at all. Now, this is a provision in volume 1 of Code of Ethics. Volume 1 is a principle-based volume. It gives you general guidance and you have to take care from that perspective. Now, volume 1 में कहीं पे भी ये कहा नहीं कि आप नहीं कर सकते हैं. Volume 1 says that अगर आपकी फीस पेंडिंग है, क्लाइंट की बहुत ज्यादा टाइम पेंडिंग है, and that fees has become a substantial amount, तो होता क्या है कि you have become indirectly a lender to a client. आप लेंडर बन गए, आप उसको लोन जैसा हो गया वो जो अमाउंट पेंडिंग है वो. Now, if that amount is becoming like a loan to a client, it's a huge amount pending for a number of years, definitely your independence is at stake. And if your independence is at stake, right, you must see whether you can be reappointed as an auditor or not. आप आपका रिपोर्ट, आपकी क्वालिटी चेकिंग कर सकते हो, and then you can perform the audit. It is not saying that you should not perform. In fact, this is a provision which will help you to get a fee from the client. जो बहुत पेंडिंग फीस है, आप क्लाइंट को बता सकते हो कि मेरी ऑडिट की फी पेंडिंग है, मैं ऑडिट अगर करना चाहते हो तो थोड़ी फीस तो रिलीज करो, या तो उसका क्वालिटी चेकिंग हमको करना पड़ेगा, उसको अलग फी आपको देनी पड़ेगी. राइट नाउ people will say that नहीं हमको छोड़ के गया क्लाइंट तो वो जा ही नहीं सकता है, because council guideline says that our statutory audit fees अगर pending है तो next auditor shall not appoint the audit, shall not accept the audit. So please remember, this is not something which is restrictive on us. This is in fact helpful to us. Going further, friends, these were the issues which I wanted to discuss very briefly in 5-10 minutes. I will discuss the provisions which Gyanji mentioned have become applicable from 1st October 2022. and which are very important provisions, especially the fees related provision is very important for us. Now, there were three provisions which were there in the Code of Ethics, which was implemented from 1st July 2020. And these three provisions were new, in a sense, Indian scenario. And therefore, there was a COVID going on there that time, and we were not able to make much awareness. And therefore, these provisions were deferred till 1st April 2022. Now, in March 2022, on 24th and 25th of March, Ethical Standard Boards took a stock of that provision and felt that 6 more months are needed for proper studying of this provision and feedback from the members. And therefore, we took a 6 months more time. We made certain changes in that provision. I'm not saying diluted those provisions, but थोड़ा हमने changes किया, थोड़े phase manner में हम लोग implement करेंगे करके कहा. And we have brought this provision applicable from 1st October 2022. इसमें दो डेफिनेशन इंपॉर्टेंट है. हर जगह पे प्रोफेशनल अकाउंटेंट वर्ड यूज किया है. इंडियन सिनारियो में प्रोफेशनल अकाउंटेंट मींस अ पर्सन हु इज अ member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, so CA. Secondly, public interest entity. Now, what do you mean by public interest entity? Public interest entity means listed entity or an entity defined under regulation or law as a public interest entity, or an entity for which the audit requirements are just like a listed company. That is, independence requirements of the auditor are just like a listed entities. Banks, insurance companies, etc. are considered as public interest entities for the purpose of these provisions. Further, what do you mean by those charged with governance? Because this word also will find many places in these provisions. Now, the phrase those charged with governance means people who are at the helm of the affairs. Management is not always at the helm of the affairs, especially in case of companies or corporate bodies or so and so. Right? Board is at the helm of the affairs. Management is something which is managing the day-to-day affairs. So it is typically, if you have to understand from the point of view of corporate bodies, it's a board which is those charged with governance. Now, with this understanding, let us very quickly understand this provision. What is fees relative size provision? Now, in case of an audit, now, if you are performing an audit, independence is a very important precondition, as we all know. What happens is, from an audit client, if I start getting a fees, and that fees is substantial fees, होता क्या है कि एक कंपनी का ऑडिट मेरे पास है, उसके किसी सिस्टर कंसर्न का मेरे पास टैक्स फाइलिंग है, उसके और किसी सिस्टर कंसर्न का मेरे पास ड्यू डिलिजेंस है, बैंक फाइनेंस है, एंड सो एंड सो फोर्थ. तो एक ही ग्रुप में मेरे पास एक ऑडिट या 2 ऑडिट है और बाकी भी सर्विसेज है, और इस क्लाइंट ग्रुप से मुझे जो फी मिल रही है वो मेरी सब्सटैंशियल फीस है. तो होता क्या है, आई स्टार्ट बिकम डिपेंडेंट ऑन दैट क्लाइंट. नाउ इन एन इंटरनेशनल सिनारियो they say that if you are dependent on the client, naturally our independence will be at stake, and we may not be able to perform the audit with that independence. So there's a rationale behind this provision. It says that it is safeguarding the threats due to the fees dependence on the audit client. If it is not an audit client, fine, no problem. But if it is an audit client, and from the related entities, I am receiving the fees which is crossing certain threshold, right? We have decided that we will bifurcate in 2 parts. Audit clients which are not public interest entities, and audit clients which are public interest entities. So as far as non-public interest entities, somewhere the independence requirement, I am not saying less, but extent is less in that sense. So there, if my total fees received from such kind of a clients is more than 40% of my aggregate fees of my firm, then naturally the dependency is there on those clients. So as I said, a private limited company की 2 private limited company का ऑडिट है, उनके सिस्टर कंसर्न का, पार्टनरशिप फर्म का मेरे पास फाइलिंग है, इनकम टैक्स असेसमेंट, जीएसटी असेसमेंट, जीएसटी रिटर्न फाइलिंग, ये सारी चीजें मिलके अगर वो ग्रुप से जो मुझे पैसा मिल रहा है वो 40% ऑफ मेरी फी से ज्यादा है, राइट, देन देयर इज अ डिपेंडेंस ऑन दैट क्लाइंट. and therefore certain safeguards must be taken. Again, I'm saying it is a volume 1 provision. Volume 1 does not directly tells you many times that don't accept it. Volume 1 tells that there is a dependency, right? So usko you will have to take care about your independence, and therefore you have to disclose this fact to the institute. हमने एक फॉर्म भी उसका डेवलप किया है, आ जाएगा अभी पब्लिक डोमेन में, right? And you have to inform to the institute that I have taken due care of my independence, and whatever safeguards required for my independence, I have taken care of. This is a self-declaration, but it has to be made to the institute, mind you. Right? Now, there are exceptions to it. This ceiling is not applicable if the firm's total turnover is 20 lakhs. Right? Not more than 20 lakhs. If it is less than 20 lakhs rupees, this provision is not at all applicable. Further, this percentage or ceiling is also not applicable for the fees which is received from I can say typically a government undertaking, nationalized banks, whose work we get by way of empanelment. Right? So this is not applicable to that also. So typically for a private clients, if my fees, total fees from them, if I'm doing even one audit in that group, and audit here means tax audit also, then I have to take a safeguard to preserve my independence if my fees from that client is exceeding 40% of my total fees. Now, same percentage for the public interest entities is 20%. So if a listed company का मैं audit कर रहा हूँ और उसके related entities का मेरे पास काम है, तो total fees उनसे मिल रही है मुझे, मेरे aggregate fee के 20% से ज्यादा हो गए, I'll have to inform to the institute if 2 years such aggregate percentage is exceeded. Right? Now, if this thing continues after 2 years also, then each year I'll have to disclose to the institute. 2 साल होने के बाद मुझे डिक्लेयर करना है, तीसरे साल, चौथे साल, पांचवें साल भी ये कंटिन्यूड है, फिर भी मुझे हर साल डिक्लेयर करना है इंस्टीट्यूट को. Now, for 2 years, 3 years, suppose it goes on like that, institute can decide about the mechanism, of course, mechanism of checking the independence also. Now, in that case, institute can refer it mandatory, peer review or quality review or any such kind of a mechanism, quality check mechanism for the chartered accountant firms, so that you should not be over dependent on one client. Of course, where the audit is there, if there's no audit in that group, there's no problem at all. Next is a taxation services to the client. Friends, here I'm not going to deal much. Generally, in tax return preparation, there's no problem at all. We can do that work. Next slide is on tax calculation. Now, if the tax calculation is done for accounting purpose, right, I must use a different persons. Now, this tax calculation, I can't do it as an auditor, but yes, I can review it. I'll just give you a very simple example. Provision for taxation. I cannot calculate and give it, or deferred tax. I cannot calculate and give it. But yes, if a client has done it and during my audit, I feel that no, this is not the correct figure, I can very well review it. No problem at all. Tax planning and advisory services, whether I can do it, there is no threat as such. Sorry, there is no denial as such. But yes, there can be a review, self-review and advocacy threat. When I am doing a tax planning or tax advisory services, I must see to it कि अगर firm of chartered accountant कर रही है तो उसके partners, taxation partners and audit partner should be different. If not, then there should be review of audit work done, because independence हमारा stake पे आता है इसमें, right? So review of the audit has to be done intermittently. Then valuation services. Now valuation services typically यहाँ पे थोड़ा negative है code हमारा. Right? If the valuation services in certain cases, which is lead to substantial degree of subjectivity or material impact on the financial statements, in case of a non-public interest entity, if it is a substantial nature of subjectivity is there and material impact on financial statements is there, I should not do the valuation at all. In case of a public interest entity, forget about subjectivity है या नहीं है. Financial impact अगर major है, then I should not do it the valuation for my audit client. So as far as tax representation is concerned, typically when I'm an auditor, right, if I'm representing the client in tax disputes, right, it might create a threat, and therefore I should not appear for the client before the court. Now, court here does not mean tribunal. So I can appear before a tribunal for an audit client, but if a substantial, huge amount is there, then I must check my independence also in this case. Last provision I'll take in 5 minutes and stop. I have just overshooted my time by 5 minutes. This is regarding NOCLAR. I am not taking NOCLAR in relation to the members in service, because initially only I have taken that issues in relation to practice I am going to take. So what is NOCLAR? I'll briefly explain and I'll stop. There's a detailed presentation on NOCLAR, but there's no time now. Now, typically, friends, during the course of our audit, whenever we are in practice, when we are conducting an audit of a client, right, during the course of audit, we find certain information and which is relation to the certain laws and regulation. Now, these laws and regulation can be of two types: laws and regulations which are related to the financial aspects, financial amount, materialization, determining the financial statements, and other laws and regulations which do not necessarily impact the financial statements in terms of amount, but it will be important for the existence of the company, right? Typically, those laws which are having the impact on the financial statements, we can deal with that, right? We definitely deal with that. We definitely have to check the compliance of those laws. Uska jo impact financial statement hai, wo hum karte hi hai. But certain laws, the violation of which or the repercussion of which will be fundamental to the existence of the entity, many times we never look into it. Take, for example, I'll give you a very simple example, although it will seem to be very crude. Say, audit करते समय मुझे एक वायलेशन मिला, पेनल्टी लगी है 50,000 रुपए की, एनवायरमेंटल लॉ का वायलेशन हुआ है. Generally, I'll look into it कि 50,000 rupees debited to profit and loss account, टैक्स ऑडिट है तो पेनल्टी है तो डिसअलाउंस कर दिया मैंने, काम खत्म हो गया. कारो रिपोर्ट में भी जहां पे मेंशन करना है कर दिया. Now, what does this NOCLAR means? NOCLAR tries to go a little bit beyond this. NOCLAR says that one has to understand the repercussions of this non-compliance. Get an information from the client. If the client is not able to give information, get the information from the experts. Form your view that whether this is detrimental to the public at large, investors, stakeholders, creditors, bankers. Because आज 50,000 रुपए की पेनल्टी लगी है एनवायरमेंटल लॉ के वायलेशन के लिए. कल जाके अगर बड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो गया इसमें से, it's kind of a start of the cyclone. Then tomorrow that company may close down or company may have to shift to other place, and that will lead to a disaster to the investors, right? So NOCLAR requires that we have to see that during the course of audit. हम लोग ऐसे ही नहीं चेक करने जाएंगे, इन्वेस्टिगेशन नहीं करेंगे इसमें, बट ऑडिट करते समय, प्रोफेशनल सर्विस देते समय अगर हमको फाइंड आउट हो गया कुछ ऐसा, इफ देयर इज सम नॉन कंप्लायंस एंड व्हिच मे लीड टू सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट repercussions, negative repercussions on the client, which are against the public interest or against the interest of the stakeholders, we should bring it to the notice of those charged with governance. Now, if people who are those charged with governance are not capable of handling it or are not listening to you, and if the matter is a very important matter, then it can be escalated to the respective authorities also. Not only that, अगर ये मैटर दोस्त चार्ज विद गवर्नेंस के पास लेके जाने जैसा है ही नहीं, फॉर एग्जांपल ह्यूज फाइनेंशियल फ्रॉड सस्पेक्टेड है, then we can also report to the respective regulators also. So this is something broad principle of NOCLAR. I am not going in detail of this. Now, NOCLAR principle examples are given of laws: fraud, corruption, money laundering, bribery, environmental protection, public health and safety. Now, do we have to have a knowledge of all these laws? No. It doesn't require that chartered accountant as an auditor should know all these laws. It only requires that during the course of audit, if you observe any non-compliance, you should not turn blind eye. इसका फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट के ऊपर इम्पैक्ट कुछ है नहीं, तो मुझे कुछ देखना नहीं है आज, या जो भी इम्पैक्ट है वो दे दिया है, इसके आगे मुझे जाना नहीं है. That kind of a behavior is not expected from an auditor. An auditor should go beyond that and find out if it is having further bad repercussions. Now, matter which are inconsequential or a personal misconduct होता है, कभी डायरेक्टर ने कुछ मिसकंडक्ट किया है, तो that is not in relation to company, right? मैनेजर ने कुछ मिसकंडक्ट किया है, that is not in relation to company. So बाहर वाले किसी के ने मिसकंडक्ट हो गया है, नॉन कंप्लायंस हो गया है, that is not in relation to company, and therefore this is only in relation to the activities which are in relation to the company, which are about client, those charged with governance of the client, management of the client, or any other individual who is acting as per the directors. Typically contractors रहते हैं बहुत बार, बड़ी कंपनी रहती है तो उनके कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स रहते हैं, राइट? तो इनसे अगर कुछ लॉ वायलेशन हो रहा है, हमने चेक करना है. अगर हमको पता चला ऑडिट करते समय फाइनेंशियल इंपैक्ट के आगे कुछ इंपैक्ट है क्या, वो हमने एसेस करना है. एसेस मींस यू शुड नॉट स्टार्ट स्टडीइंग द लॉ. यू कैन गेट एन इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम द क्लाइंट, गेट एन इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम द एक्सपर्ट्स, एंड देन ब्रिंग इट टू द नोटिस ऑफ द रिस्पेक्टिव पर्सन. दिस इज अ प्रिंसिपल. नाउ टू बिगिन विथ, these NOCLAR principles will be applicable only for the listed entities, the shares of which are listed on recognized stock exchange in India and having net worth about 250 crores and more. So initially जो हमने अप्लाई किया है वो ओनली बड़ी लिस्टेड कंपनी को अप्लाई हुआ, जहां पे इंड एस अभी अप्लाई हो रहा है लिस्टेड कंपनीज को, राइट? इन अ फेज मैनर इट विल बी एक्सटेंडेड टू ऑल लिस्टेड एंटिटीज. एंड ऑडिट जो यहां पे कहा गया है, इट मींस ओनली द स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट, जहां पे हम ट्रू एंड फेयर रिव्यू करते हैं. इंटरनल ऑडिट हमने अप्लाई नहीं किया है अभी, राइट? सो दिस इज इन शॉर्ट द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ NOCLAR. आई एम नॉट गोइंग इन डिटेल ऑफ दैट. थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर पेशेंट लिसनिंग, एंड आई ऑलवेज एंड दिस कोड ऑफ एथिक्स सेशन with the last slide where I mentioned this quote of Swami Vivekananda, because a code of ethics, the ethics are the principle. Many times we get tempted to do certain things. So when there is a certain conflict between heart and brain, दिल कहता है कि नहीं करना चाहिए, दिमाग कहता है करना चाहिए, ऐसे कर सकते हैं, वैसे कर सकते हैं, right? Please, when there is a conflict between heart and brain, follow your heart. You'll be always be doing all the things ethically. Thank you very much for patient listening, and thanks Gyan Bhai for this great opportunity and great gathering. I think this might be the biggest session of Ethical Standard Board, highly attended session of Ethical Standard Board. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for Ghaziabad, Lucknow, Noida and Thane branch for participating in this initiative led by our Ethical Standard Board member Gyan Mishra ji. Thank you.
So thank you. It was really a great session, Mangesh bhai. I was throughout the session and I have seen and learned a lot of things today. And probably the way you have discussed the session, how the members have to go for the small issues and what are the day-to-day issues of the members and how they have to address the things. So it was really very interesting session, and I'm sure that the members have benefited a lot. तो जिस तरीके से आपने ऑडिटर्स को लेकर के, NOCLAR को लेकर के, किन चीजों में हम कर सकते हैं, टेंडर को लेकर के, lot of areas you have covered in such a wonderful way that the members are certainly going to get the benefit of your this 2 hours hard work. I'm sure about it. So once again, thank you, Mangesh bhai, for giving your precious time in the interest of the members at large. In fact, this 2 hours time, what the CPE committee has decided for code of ethics and 2 hours for standard auditing. So now, since last days for the compliance of CPRs are going on, so it was really wonderful session. I have received so many calls from the members. They were waiting for this session. So thank you, Mangesh bhai, and of course the entire committee. I was expecting Preeti ma'am, our Kevisha ma'am also, but probably she couldn't join. And I'm grateful to the branches.
She's in another meeting with the president. I think that's why she's not able to attend. I think we can go for questions.
So Ashish ji, you please take the questions. And I can see Chairman of Thane branch, Supril ji.
Yeah, he's also there.
You must have benefited yourself and members also. Oh, great.
Chalo, Ashish ji, question le lo.
Sir, good evening. And आपने ये जो बोला ना कि एथिक्स आर प्रिंसिपल, और ये कहीं ना कुछ पर्सनालिटी से भी आता है, बट बीइंग अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हमें तो एथिक्स को पालन करना ही है. कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं मेंबर्स के सर, मैं वो क्वेश्चंस पूछ लो. ठीक है सर. सर पहला क्वेश्चन ये है कि outgoing auditor gives conditional NOC in few cases that they write ki they do not have objection subject to clearance of their outstanding dues. So how should incoming auditor tackle such a situation?
Now see, outstanding dues is not a word in law. अपने यहाँ पे it is a undisputed audit fees for conducting the statutory audit. तो अनडिस्प्यूटेड ऑडिट फी अगर पेंडिंग है स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट की, तो हमने काम लेना ही नहीं है. इट शैल नॉट एक्सेप्ट. सवाल ही नहीं आता है कंडीशनल एनओसी का, राइट? तो ये लेना ही नहीं है, तो पैसा उसका पूरा देने दो. ओनली ऑडिट फीस, कंडीशन ऑडिट फीस की है, बाकी का क्या रिकमेंडेटरी है. हम क्लाइंट को बोल सकते हैं, अगर टैक्सेशन उसका पेंडिंग है, टैक्सेशन का, क्लाइंट को हम बोल सकते हैं, एक लिखित स्वरूप में देना है क्लाइंट को कि आप हो सके तो आप जल्दी पेमेंट कर दो, बट हमको उसमें वेट करने की जरूरत नहीं है, right? But statutory audit fee, yes, if it is pending, unconditional, conditional, कुछ है ही नहीं है इसमें, right?
Okay.
There is no NOC in this case. We shall not accept.
Okay. अच्छा सर, मैं इसी में थोड़ा सा आपसे पूछूं कि अगर कंप्लायंस का काम कर रखा है और उसकी फीस पेंडिंग है, देन क्या एनओसी की जरूरत है?
It is NOC नहीं, कम्युनिकेशन की जरूरत खाली ऑडिट में है.
ओके सर. सेकंड,
let me tell you that our code has mentioned that as a professional etiquette. See, देखो ये कम्युनिकेशन की जो प्रोविजन है ना, इसमें दो एस्पेक्ट है, टू रीजन से. ये दो रीजन से प्रोविजन है. एक, प्रोफेशनल एटिकेट्स. दो, जब हम ऑडिट करते हैं तो पहले वाले ऑडिटर को अगर हमको कुछ बताना है कि भाई मुझे भी ये आपको पॉइंट आउट करना है, ये क्लाइंट के बारे में फलाना चीज आप देख लेना, राइट? उसके लिए है. एज फार एज अदर वर्क इज कंसर्न, ऑडिट तो सवाल नहीं है. प्रोफेशनल एटिकेट्स रिकमेंडेटरी है, लिखा है हमने, अगर आप करो तो अच्छा है, नहीं करो तो वायोलेशन नहीं है.
ओके. अच्छा, एक छोटा सा और क्वेरी है सर कि जैसे हम स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट के लिए तो हम एनओसी ले रहे हैं, बट क्या ये जो बैंकिंग में हम लोग स्टॉक ऑडिट कर रहे हैं या रेवेन्यू ऑडिट कर रहे हैं या हम और भी तरह की ऑडिट कर रहे हैं, उसमें भी एनओसीज की जरूरत है?
देखो, रेवेन्यू ऑडिट पे डेफिनेटली है, बिकॉज कंकरेंट ऑडिट, रेवेन्यू ऑडिट, इंटरनल ऑडिट है. स्टॉक ऑडिट के ऊपर कभी कभी लोग बोलते हैं कि वेदर इट इज एन ऑडिट और इंस्पेक्शन. करेक्ट. केवल ऑडिट वर्ड कहने से आ रहा है. टेक्निकली यस, वी शुड कम्युनिकेट टेक्निकली, राइट? लेट मी टेल यू दैट ज्ञान भाई इज ऑल्सो हियर. एथिकल स्टैंडर्ड बोर्ड हम लोग कुछ चीजें रिवैम्प करने को जा रहे हैं. मैं ये नहीं बोलता हूं कि ये निकल जाएगी प्रोविजन, बट हम लोग सोच रहे हैं कुछ प्रोविजन का नए तरीके से मतलब नए सिरे से, राइट? वेदर, जैसे क्वेरी आपने अभी पूछी है, स्टॉक ऑडिट पे लगना चाहिए नहीं चाहिए, ऑडिट मतलब कौन सा ऑडिट, राइट? एज द थिंग स्टैंड्स टुडे, इट इज एप्लीकेबल टू ऑल ऑडिट.
ओके, थैंक यू.
ऑडिट वर्ड जहां पे भी आता है जरूरी है.
ओके sir, what happen if the management adjusts the audit fees payable in books and share the books with us?
Adjust the audit fees मतलब?
अब सर क्वेरी यही है कि मैनेजमेंट ने एडजस्ट कर लिया ऑडिट फीस, और मेरे ख्याल से एडजस्ट करने के बाद उसको बुक्स दिखा दिया कि देयर इज नो आउटस्टैंडिंग ऑफ ऑडिट फीस.
नहीं. ऑडिट फी मैनेजमेंट ने भले कुछ बुक्स में नहीं दिखाया रहेगा, पहले जब हम कम्युनिकेट करते हैं ना पिछले ऑडिटर को, करेक्ट? दो चीजें है. अगर मेरे को बुक्स में दिख रहा है, करेक्ट, कि ऑडिट फी पेंडिंग है, तो सवाल ही नहीं आता है आगे जाने का. नंबर दो, चलो बुक्स में नहीं दिख रहा, मैं कम्युनिकेट तो करूंगा, वो सीए बताएगा मुझे मेरी फी पेंडिंग है, तो भी आगे नहीं जाना है, राइट? तो क्लाइंट से एक्सप्लेनेशन लेना है कि भाई एग्जैक्टली क्या है आपका, बताओ किधर पेमेंट किया है, बताओ विच इज द चेक नंबर, कहां पे क्लियर हो गया है, इतना सारा डिटेल हमको लेना पड़ेगा। जहां पे जब क्लाइंट, जो ऑडिटर, आउटगोइंग ऑडिटर एक चीज बोलता है, क्लाइंट एक चीज अगर बोलता है, आपको डॉक्यूमेंट्री प्रूफ लेना पड़ेगा पेमेंट का।
अच्छा
केवल
सर, मैं
इसके ऊपर मत जाना।
इसी में मैं एक और चीज ऐड करता हूं कि एक ऑडिटर है, वो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की ऑडिट कर रहा है, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का एक विंग है उसका ऑडिट कर रहा है, उसका फीस वहां पर पेंडिंग है। नए ऑडिटर का अपॉइंटमेंट हो गया, नए ऑडिटर ने पुराने ऑडिटर से कम्युनिकेट करा, कम्युनिकेट करने पर उसने बोला कि हाँ हमारी फीस पेंडिंग है, हम एनओसी नहीं दे सकते। कुछ दिन बाद उस पुराने ऑडिटर के पास स्टेट गवर्नमेंट से लेटर आता है कि आप चूंकि उसको एनओसी नहीं दे रहे हो तो वो काम नहीं कर पा रहा है, और अगर आप काम नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो ये जो सरकारी काम है उसको ना करने में आप बाधा उत्पन्न कर रहे हो। नाउ वी विल कंप्लेन टू आईसीआई, we will complain to ICI why you are not giving to NOC.
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग अगेन, पिछले ऑडिटर का कुछ भी मिस्टेक नहीं है, ये स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट है ना। हाँ ये स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट के लिए एप्लीकेबल है, मतलब जो ट्रू एंड फेयर ऑडिट हम करते हैं ना, बैलेंस शीट साइन करके। नाउ अंडर एक्ट अगर वो स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट है तो पिछला ऑडिटर का कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। एनओसी वर्क इधर लॉ में है ही नहीं हमारे यहाँ पे, ठीक है, करेक्ट। वो जो फैक्चुअल इंफॉर्मेशन है वो बता रहा है कि भाई मेरी फीस पेंडिंग है, मेरी फीस पेंडिंग है। अभी इनकमिंग ऑडिटर ने अगर फीस पेंडिंग है देन ही शैल नॉट एक्सेप्ट एन ऑडिट। सवाल ही नहीं आता है। इनकमिंग ऑडिटर ने स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को बताना चाहिए कि हमारा कोड ऐसे कहता है, सुनो मेरी बात सुनो, हमारा कोड ऐसे कहता है कि मैंने तो ऑडिट करना ही नहीं है, सवाल ही नहीं आता है करने का, आप पहले उसकी फी पे करो। हाँ अगर डिस्प्यूट है कुछ, then that dispute should be a real dispute, then problem नहीं है। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट अगर फाइल करती है केस आईसीआई के पास में, अगर यही आपका फैक्ट है, बिकॉज फैक्ट दूसरा भी हो सकता है, दैट्स व्हाई, अगर यही आपका फैक्ट है तो ही इज नॉट एट फॉल्ट। उसने कुछ एनओसी जैसा देना ही नहीं है, उसने खाली इतना ही बोलना है कि मेरी फी पेंडिंग है।
ओके,
moreover आशीष जी, in addition to what Mangesh bhai is saying, again this is well established fact that there is no such word used in code of ethics or constitution of ICI like NOC. This is communication with the previous auditor, and that also as per companies act also there is requirement with the communication with the previous auditor.
But sir, in general practice we use these words ki we have to take serious only for general,
उसमें कुछ इश्यू नहीं है। बट आपका जो क्वेश्चन है ना कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट अगर ये आउटगोइंग ऑर्डर के अगेंस्ट केस फाइल करेगा तो कुछ नहीं होने वाला है।
ओके,
अगर यही फैक्ट है तो और कुछ फैक्ट रहेगा कल प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी।
ठीक सर, कैन अ फुल टाइम सीओपी होल्डर बिकम डायरेक्टर इन अ कंपनी?
No, I have already explained. He can become a director in a company, but that director should be director simpliciter. मतलब उसने किसी भी एक्टिविटी में पार्ट नहीं लेना चाहिए। He can only attend the meetings of the board और बोर्ड कमिटीज रहती है, कोई सीएसआर कमिटी है, ऑडिट कमिटी है, वो कर सकता है। एंड उसको रेम्यूनरेशन जो है वो केवल सिटिंग फीस के रूप में ही लेना अपेक्षित है, उसके अलावा कुछ रेम्यूनरेशन नहीं ले सकता है। ऐसी डायरेक्टरशिप अलाउड है, इसके अलावा एक भी डायरेक्टरशिप अलाउड नहीं है प्रैक्टिसिंग चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट।
Okay. Sir, can a CA firm accept statutory audit of a company which had given a loan to one partner of a CA firm, but the partner cleared his dues before the appointed date?
Actually, if you ask me, it is a company है ना ये?
Yes.
The Companies Act itself prohibits that, right? Indebtedness of that to the company, right? Yes. It is prohibited. I think अभी 5 लाख है ना आशीष, कितना? 5 lakhs rupees of indebtedness is prohibited, and if it's a bank, right? At least there is a difference between the regular course of a business or non-regular course of a business. So better not to do it, even if he has cleared it. Any point during the year he has taken that loan, it is not to do it.
Sir, can a practicing chartered accountant can do farming and sell his cash crops and fruits from his orchard? Is it within the code of ethics?
देखिए जनरल परमिशन जो है right, Appendix 9 में, owning an agricultural land and carrying an agricultural activity, there is a general permission. But मैंने पहले ही कहा कि when we do these things, right, code of ethics को letter and spirit में interpret करना है हमने. सब काम धंधा छोड़ के यही बंदा यही काम कर रहा है क्या, तो ये प्रॉब्लमेटिक हो सकता है उसको, राइट. सो ही हैज टू सब्सटेंशिएट दैट अल्टीमेटली. जनरली इट इज अलाउड, कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है.
अभी तो मेरे ख्याल से वो जो शेयर ट्रेडिंग वाला था वो भी कुछ इंस्टीट्यूट ने अलाउ करा है मेंबर्स के.
शेयर ट्रेडिंग नहीं, डेरिवेटिव ट्रेडिंग मैंने एक्सप्लेन किया पहले ही.
ओके, ठीक है.
शेयर ट्रेडिंग नहीं अलाउड है.
कैपिटल गेन सर, कैपिटल गेन
तो अलाउड है. इन्वेस्टमेंट इज अलाउड, इन्वेस्टमेंट इन शेयर्स इज अलाउड.
ओके सर, इन वन केस देयर वर 4 partners. 3 partners were against 1 partner and they have debarred him not legally. Outgoing partner filed a case against the partners and sending a legal notice to the auditor and accountants who both are CA. How to deal with these situation?
नहीं, देखिए 3 पार्टनर थे,
4,
उन्होंने एक पार्टनर को इल्लीगली निकाल दिया. That is what I mentioned, that illegally निकाल दिया का मतलब क्या है. So that is why when we accept the audit, all the study of these documents are important. Memorandum, company है तो memorandum article, firm है तो उसका deed होना चाहिए, trust है तो trust deed होना चाहिए. Now, if that partner has been removed illegally, an auditor has not qualified the accounts, accountant has prepared, because see, even an accountant, code of ethics is applicable to member in service also. Right? So if he's in collusion with somebody else, I'm not dealing in that service provision right now, but as an auditor, if he's certifying the accounts and it means that he is certifying that partner has been properly removed. And if it is illegal, then there's definitely a problem. There are different clauses, right? There can be a material misstatement in the accounts because his capital will be evaporated. There is a gross negligence on the part of the chartered accountant, not disclosing the material facts also. So all these things will be there. So number of clauses will get attracted.
केस लॉ की तरह क्वेश्चन फ्रेम किया गया है. AGM ड्यू डेट इज 30th September 2022. Data given by the client to the auditor on 14th of November.
Sorry. AGM is 30th December.
No, due date is 30th September. And data given by the client to the auditor is on 14th of November.
Okay.
Where CA is outside her hometown, hence may not able to check the data and unable to generate the UDIN and sign the financials. Later on, after 10th of December, CA came back and started and working and completed the audit, but the 60 days to generate UDIN has gone. How to deal this case?
नहीं, ऑडिट बाद में कैसे किया? AGM 30th November, 30th September है ना, ऑडिट बाद में कैसे हो गया? प्रैक्टिकल क्वेश्चन है, पर्सनली डिस्कस करना. वर्चुअल मीटिंग है, वर्चुअल मीटिंग में रिकॉर्डिंग होता है, हम लोग प्रैक्टिकली डिस्कस करेंगे.
ठीक है सर. It has been seen.
बराबर है ना?
बिल्कुल.
मेंबर को मैसेज किया रहेगा. Practically you can call me, I'll tell.
Sir, it has been seen people are promoting business of soft skill training in the name of practice growth with pictures of their degree and COP. Are they permitted to do so?
See, certain training, corporate training, as a practicing chartered accountant, we are allowed to do. There's no problem at all. Soft skill is typically we have, what you can say, expressly we have not allowed. Now, what is soft skill again is an issue. Say if I'm teaching a presentation skill, if I'm doing a corporate training in that. Now, whether it's a soft skill or corporate training or whether, any kind of a thing. So corporate training allowed hai. Soft skill मतलब वो बहुत ही अभी public speaking के classes लेता है. Then that is not allowed to him. Correct? Our ethical standard board secretary is आशीष जी बराबर है ना? Yeah. चलो.
Can a chartered accountant, after surrendering COP, can run a private limited with all accounts and financial consultancy services and can advertise publicly, sir?
Can a chartered accountant, after surrendering a COP,
Yes.
run a private limited company with all accounts? All account matlab, and financial consultancy services. See, a chartered accountant, say if I'm not having COP, I can very well form a company, right? And do any activity in that company. Who is going to stop me? Even if I'm in practice and I want to do a corporate form of practice is allowed to me. Of course, all activities are not allowed to me for the short time. I will not take all the activities, but certain activities which are been stipulated under clause 4 of section 2, subsection 2, management consultancy and other activities. For that, I can have a management consultancy company, which is called as corporate form of practice. And I can be a whole-time director there and I can be a practicing chartered accountant also. But such corporate form of practice has to be registered with the institute.
सर एक और लास्ट क्वेरी है, वो भी पूछ लूं मैं, वो शायद आपके पास पेपर में नहीं होगा. सर एक चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने क्या करा, टैक्स ऑडिट के लिए उसने प्रीवियस ऑडिटर से कम्युनिकेट करा. उसने प्रीवियस ऑडिटर ने फीस का अपना वो लिया कि साहब हमारा फीस पेंडिंग है. नए ऑडिटर ने उसकी ऑडिट नहीं करी, बट उसने समहाउ किसी और ऑडिटर से, एंड दैट ऑडिटर फर्म इज बेस्ड इन कैलकाटा, तो वहां से वो ऑडिट होकर आ गया.
हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है. आई नो दैट दिस इशू इज देयर. पिछला ऑडिटर ही हमको मालूम नहीं पड़ रहा है फाइल करने के लिए केस, बराबर ना? बिकॉज टैक्स ऑडिट है, कंपनी ऑडिट में ये फाइंड आउट हो जाता है, टैक्स ऑडिट में डिफिकल्टी है. Frankly speaking, we are deliberating on this issue कि पिछला ऑडिटर मालूम कैसे हो जाए केस फाइल करने के लिए. Otherwise, there is an issue in this, so we will try and do something in UDIN. Let's see.
नहीं, लेकिन सर क्या ऐसा कुछ है कि जो वो नया ऑडिटर था जिसने वो ऑडिट करवाया, क्या हम उसको कहीं ला सकते हैं ग्रिप में?
नहीं, न्यू ऑडिटर, नया ऑडिटर मालूम है आपको?
नहीं, नया ऑडिटर
साइन किया है.
नहीं, जिसने साइन किया वो तो कलकत्ता बेस्ड है, बट जिसने ये करवाया
क्या करवाया उसको कैसे पता चला? मतलब रिकॉर्ड पे कैसे ला सकते हैं करवाया करके?
सर बिकॉज कि क्लाइंट ने अपने रिकॉर्ड्स जो दिए, मैं एक एग्जांपल फ्रेम कर रहा हूं कि ए जो था वो प्रीवियस ऑडिटर था, बी नया ऑडिटर था. ए ने जब एनओसी नहीं दी, मैं एनओसी वर्ड का यूज कर रहा हूं सर, इट इज जस्ट अ प्रीवियस कम्युनिकेशन. वो बी ने जब नए वाले ऑडिटर ने एनओसी एक्सेप्ट, मतलब उसने उस बात को ऑनर किया, लेकिन उसने क्या करा, सी से उसको ऑडिट करा दिया और बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स बी के द्वारा सी को दिया गया.
वो वही मैं बोल रहा हूं, ये अगर एस्टैब्लिश कर सकते हैं तो डेफिनेटली केस है. नहीं तो सी को फाइंड आउट किया और सी एस्टैब्लिश हो गया तो सी के अगेंस्ट तो केस बनता ही है.
लेकिन हम बी को भी चाहते हैं, क्या बी को हम ला सकते हैं अगर ये पता चल जाता है कि
That's what I'm saying. बी को अगर हम एस्टैब्लिश कर सकते हैं कि ये उसके चेन थ्रू गया है, there is a documentary evidence, then definitely not under communication clause, but there are certain other clauses bringing disrepute to the profession or something of that kind, you know, that we can definitely do it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. आपने बहुत अच्छा डिलिब्रेशन रहा और again we can say कि ethics are principle. Now I would like to say कि रेगुलर जो वोट ऑफ थैंक्स है हमारा, वो स्वप्निल सुरेश कोल्टे, द चेयरमैन ऑफ थाने ब्रांच. स्वप्निल जी.
Yes, Ashish ji, thank you so much. So at the outset, I want to thank the Ethical Standard Board for organizing such a knowledge-enriching lecture. I mean, I have always of the belief that theoretical knowledge is very good to have, but at times it becomes redundant. Having a practical knowledge is something that is enriching and goes a long way. So here I really want to thank our speaker for today, that CM Mangesh Kinare sir, for having such a practical perspective, for giving out a practical perspective to all the participants out over here. We will be grateful for this learning and this will be very helpful for us. I'd also like to highlight that CM Mangesh Kinare is also the member of the disciplinary committee. So having a perspective from the quasi-judicial authority will add a different flavor to our understanding of the code of ethics. And I really hope after the end of this lecture, we'll implement our today's learning in our day-to-day activities and ensure that our practice is well within the boundaries set up by the Code of Ethics, that is our Lakshman Rekha, because we always know the consequences of crossing the Lakshman Rekha. So I wish you all a very happy learning. I want to thank you again for coming out in such large numbers in spite of having a busy compliance schedule out over there. And I hope that we all keep meeting and keep learning from such sessions. Thank you so much, Mangesh sir. Thank you so much, Gyan Mishra sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gyan
Thank you.
Bhai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mangesh Bhaiya, for your precious time. And
I can see Swami Vivekananda portrait behind you. I can see Swami Vivekananda portrait behind you. Thank you very much.
And thank you,
all
Nitin
the
Bhai.
chairmen. Ajit?
Nitin Bhai.
Yes, everyone, all chairmen of these branches. And
thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yes.
sir. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Thank you,
Ananda.
Gyan Bhai. Chalo.